It's time for Mac Break Weekly. Andy, Alex, Renee, they're all here. They've all been studying hard, and we will give you the final, definitive, everything you need to know about Apple's new child pornography plans, what it means, how it works, and what the problems are. This is one you're not going to want to miss. We'll also talk about some new Apple TV programming. And we've got some tips as well. It's all coming up next on Mac Break Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Mac Break Weekly, episode 778, recorded Tuesday, August 10th, 2021. Hatch my eggs. Mac Break Weekly is brought to you by Udacity. Gain in-demand tech skills in as little as 3 months with Udacity's part-time online tech courses. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with code TWIT75. Limited time offer. And by AT&T Active Armor. We rely so much on our phones these days and are always on them, whether it's live streaming content, catching up with family on weekly video calls, or watching your favorite podcast. There's no room for fraud calls. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority, helping block those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor, 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible device and service required. Visit att.com/activearmor for details. It's time for Mac Break Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news. Our team has assembled Alex Lindsay from 090.media and, of course, officehours.global. Good day, Alex.
Hello, hello.
Do you sometimes lose track of what time of day or night it is?
It is. It does get. It turns into a little bit of a wash, because now that office hours is 24/7.
Yeah.
Like I was like hanging out last night cleaning, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to jump into office hours.
Yeah. It's the Las Vegas of podcasts. You keep the curtains drawn. You don't need to know the sun has come up.
Yep.
Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Also, Andy Iannacco, who spent the morning shaving.
It wasn't a 6-hour process. It was just one of those, like you make the call at 10 a.m. that no, you know what, I don't need to shave, and then like 10 minutes before your people are going to be seeing you, your faith and your judgment lapses. You're like, you know what, I gotta really just shave in case I forget I have a decent camera now, and people
you do that. I tell you, Alex has raised the bar for all of us.
Yep.
I am now the lowest quality camera, even though I'm in studio and you guys are all on Zoom. My quality is terrible, which is good because the bag's in my eyes. I need an eye light. Can you get me a light right? That's what Peter Jennings used to have. A light right there, firing into the bags, flattens them right out. Right, Alex? That's all you need. Just an eye light.
Yeah, there's who had those? And CMDC and at the Wall Street at Wall Street.
ABC.
Have
Peter
these
Jennings,
little,
famous.
Lumapads. They're like Roscoe Lumapads, I think, are the things they put up there. Yeah.
Famous. That Peter Jennings just had a little light, and it's on your desk, firing right in your eyes. I don't know how you get used to that, but anyway, it certainly helps. Also, somebody who does not need an eye light, but now has a pop filter. So each to his own. Mr. Renee Ritchie.
Plosive.
Hey, Renee Ritchie.
Hey, Leo. I'm so happy. I spent 3 days making the toughest 43-minute video of my life, and now I can just relax and talk comic books and operate with you folks.
What?
Wait.
Wrong. Because of course everybody knows this is the show where we talk about Apple's quote expanded protections for children. Think of the children. Apple.com. If you haven't already heard this discussion ad nauseum. But I thought, this is Mac Break Weekly. If anywhere, we should be talking about it.
A little bit better.
Start with Apple's page, which is apple.com/child safety. And if you go to the page, you will understand better what they're doing. By the way, better than a lot of mainstream media, what they're doing. And then if you really care, there's a frequently asked questions. There's a white paper on how they're doing it. I'll give you the brief, succinct version. And correct me if I'm wrong, because it is easy to get this wrong. Apple's actually...
It's super complicated.
They announced 3 different initiatives all under one rubric of detecting child pornography, or as they call it, CSAM, child sexual abuse material. They're going to scan images in iCloud photos. They are also going to scan images on your iPad and iPhone, starting with iOS 15. But scan, we need to understand what that means. They are going to use a database of essentially fingerprints, hashes, from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, hereinafter referred to as NCMEC. NCMEC has maintained this database for some time. It's created using a perceptual hash technology that was developed by Microsoft and given to NCMEC by Microsoft. It creates what NCMEC claims is a unique hash for known child pornography, images that are known to be child pornography. That child pornography cannot be held by any other organization for obvious reasons. You don't want to distribute it. So the U.S. government created and funded NCMEC to do this. They hold those images, they create that hash, and then companies like Facebook, they've been doing it for some time, Google, they've been doing it for some time, and now Apple, use that database to match, and they create on their end a similar hash using a similar technology and then check. And if the fingerprints match, and Apple says there's a 1 in 1 trillion, which we'll get to, a 1 in 1 trillion chance of a false positive. That's a little check mark, and Apple has some threshold at some point at which, if there are enough check marks, they notify NCMEC. We've got, somebody who's got CSAM, and then I don't know what NCMEC does. Presumably, they turn you over to the law enforcements. Yes. Now, we should be clear that Apple's doing this in 3 different ways. iCloud Photos, there's before an image goes to iCloud Photos, there's an on-device matching process that checks against the NCMEC database. There's also that's when this threshold secret sharing system, which Apple developed, comes into place. The contents of the vouchers generated by this cryptographic process cannot be interpreted by Apple unless the iCloud Photos account crosses the threshold of known CSAM content. They don't say what the threshold is, but they say it is set to provide an extremely high level of accuracy and ensures less than 1 in 1 trillion chance per year of incorrectly flagging a given account. Then, once it crosses that threshold, Apple manually reviews each report to confirm there's a match. In other words, a lower quality copy of that image is sent to a human being at Apple what is he matching against? It can't be the actual image because they don't have the images. So I guess they looking.
It's the hash and then the low res version of the image if they have to. Yeah.
I guess they can look at the low res image and say, yes, that's porno, child porn. Okay. Then they disable the account report to NCMEC. If the user feels the account has been mistakenly flagged, they can file an appeal. There is also another technology being done on the phone, and it stays on the phone, and it's used. Now, this one is a little less clear. So, Renee, you might want to help me on this one.
For sure.
In Syrian search, they're going to provide, Apple says, additional resources to help children and parents stay safe online and get help with unsafe situations. For example, users who ask Siri how they can report CSAM or child exploitation will be pointed to an appropriate spot. That's not controversial. This might be a little bit more. Siri and Search are being updated to intervene when users perform searches for queries related to CSAM. They'll say, hey, that's harmful and problematic, et cetera, and provide resources from partners. That's coming to iOS 15, iPadOS 15, watchOS 8, and macOS Monterey. And then if you are under 13, if you're a child, images sent to and from you are being scanned in the same way. And I wasn't clear, Renee. Do they have to cross that threshold? Probably not. If even one incident, it will then notify the parent. It does not.
Yeah. So this is a different.
That's a new technology.
It's a very different system, and it's causing a lot of confusion. This is not being matched against anything. The matching is only for existing
images
out there,
on
images.
Yeah.
This is for images that are being sent to a child. So everything about it's not an iMessage feature at all because it also works with SMS and MMS. It's built into the Messenger client. So it uses computer vision. And if it determines, like the same way the Photos app can tell you if it's a cat or a car, this will determine if it's an explicit sexual image, and then it will blur it automatically.
So that's not CSAM. That could be pornography of any kind. Or
it's anything that's detected to be explicit sexuality, yeah.
Yeah, and we don't know how well that works. In the past, we've seen systems like this that have not worked very well. But again, this doesn't go to the police or NCMEC. This goes to parents. All right.
The state. Go ahead.
So that's the three. That's the three different things it's doing. Have I left anything out?
The controversial aspect to this one is that if the person is under is 12 years old or under, the parent can also optionally, it's all opt-in. It's not on by default, but they can opt in to getting a notification. So if the child hits, show me the picture anyway, they'll put up a warning. If the kid says, I still want to see it, they'll put up a second warning saying, if you look at this, your parent's going to be notified. And if they hit that anyway, they'll send a notification. And some people worry that this will out. If it's a non-hetero image, for example, it will lead to outing, which can lead to abuse or abandonment or issues like that.
Here's the
here's the
four different screens that a child would see, and the four different levels, and of course this is the final one.
And it's sending and receiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should mention there is a refinement on this, though. Specifically, this is that is what happens if the user is 12 years old or younger. If it's a teenager, the tool will say, "Hey, by the way, this seems to be explicit content," and you have to willingly tap on it to get it. But specifically, if it's a teenager, then the parent does not get notified. It's just simply
under
between
13.
It's the exact no. It's a teenager between 13 and 17. And
they just get that warning though I was talking about earlier.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're a teenager, so basically within that understood demographic of kids who are more sexually aware, who might be again exploring sexuality and not want to share certain things with their parents. The parents can activate or deactivate the broader feature, but if they're a teenager, they cannot enable the feature that says if the teenager decides to view this explicit image, explicit image inside the Messages app, the parent will be notified. This will not happen, cannot happen if it's a teenager.
However, that
they can't roll back either. So
that Siri and
if the child is
go ahead.
Sorry,
I was going to say if the child is over 13 and they want to try to roll it back to control it anyway, you can't change the age of an under 13 account. You could create a new one, but you can't make someone under 13 again if they've already been under 13.
And does the Siri and search thing only apply to people, to children, or does it apply to everyone?
Everyone.
It applies to everybody, but all of this stuff is U.S. only.
Yeah, the Siri and search thing is more of a general information sort of resource, and we also should call out when you think about this warnings that 12 years old and younger get, you imagine like Nanny Patrol has blocked transmission of this. It's actually a very conversational sort of, hey, we want to let you know that we think that this might be explicit. You may or may not want to view this, and it's okay if you decide not to see this. And also very, very gently saying, here's what you might be in for. Like it doesn't anticipate that this is like a 22-year-old who's being given these messages. That it basically talks in the simple language that you would find helpful for a child to see if they have been swapping pictures between each other without really understanding what's going on, or if they are unfortunately being groomed for future abuse. This is basically lets them know that you've done nothing wrong. There are people you can talk to about this. This is something that you might want to start to think more heavily about. So this is I think it's been very, very well done.
We're going to talk about that in a second. There is a duty to report in the U.S. Penal Code. They have to report, but what's important is there is a protection of privacy built into that penal code, which says nothing in this section shall be construed to require a provider to monitor any user, subscriber, or customer, monitor the content. So in other words, Apple's not required by the penal code to do this. They are required if they should find out in some other way.
No requirement to scan. There's a requirement to report if they do find out.
They have a requirement. Yeah. As a result, by the way, and we should point to give you some context, Facebook has reported last year in 2020 20.3 million reports of CSAM. 20 million
out of
reports.
the 21 million they got, 20 million were from Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Yeah. In the same year, Apple made 265. 265 compared to 20 million. By the way, Facebook and Google are already using
500,000.
In fact, I think many other cloud providers are using this NCMEC database and the fingerprinting technology.
Snapchat,
on their
Imager,
cloud.
Microsoft, all of them did hundreds of thousands of reports.
Right.
Anyone you could think of.
And they're
did
doing
hundreds of
that.
thousands of reports.
They're doing that against data stored in their cloud services in every account, every case.
Well,
PhotoDNA as far as I know, PhotoDNA runs on the cloud and does scans.
Yeah.
Yeah, Google is also doing matches against file attachments in Gmail as well. So
that's right, Gmail as well.
Very emphatic.
That's right. Yeah.
And Apple has done that in Apple Mail for several years as well. This is just the first time they're doing it in.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So this is not the first time they're doing it in Apple Mail. When you say Apple Mail, that's mail, iCloud Mail.
iCloud Mail.
Very important. They're not doing it on the app. They're doing it in the cloud.
In transit, they were doing a similar sort of a CSAM
if you
search.
use iCloud Mail, not for other mail providers. All right. So, I think we've laid the.
Like you said, they all do it.
They all do it, but they all do it, and there's a very, very important distinction. They all do it in the cloud. Nobody, as to my knowledge, Google does not do it on your Android device. Is that correct?
As far as I understand, no.
No. In fact, nobody does it on your computer or your phone. Everybody that does it in on their cloud service.
Yeah.
And in the case of Apple, it's a little bit farther in transit to and from Apple and Google with mail in transit to and from.
Yeah. Can I just say that I think that we're going to talk a lot about the things that Apple is doing right and the things that we think Apple is doing wrong. I think the one thing after studying this for days and days that I think is unequivocally wrong is that, boy, did they screw up the messaging on this. Big time. That when the word that comes out early on, when the news has broken officially, but they've yet to come out with the fact, they've yet to send people out to give interviews and give more information. They're allowing people to think that this is all one feature, this idea of scanning things on your device that applies to all of these new policies, instead of making it very, very clear that there is one feature that will scan photos looking for content matches that only applies to photos that you're uploading to iCloud. There is a second feature that does not involve the cops, does not involve criminal investigation at all, that only affects messages that are being transmitted to or from a teenager or someone younger than that. And there is a third thing about that is simply informational based. It's amazing how much that I'm not the smartest knife in the onion box. However, the amount of time it took me to convince myself that we are indeed talking about 2 or 3 completely separate features with separate powers and separate limitations and separate threats and separate features, that was shocking for me that Apple dropped the ball that badly on the messaging of this. They could have saved themselves so much hurt by rolling these things out one at a time separately, by basically saying that we're having a more active approach against exposure of abuse of children and exposure of children to sexually advanced, let's say, imagery, and making. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. All I'm saying is that if they had done one thing about the on-device stuff that only affects iCloud, one thing that only affects the communication between children, make those 2 separate announcements on separate weeks, I think they could have saved themselves a whole bag of hurt. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, we're fortunate because we are now discussing it in the subsequent week after hearing from a lot of different voices.
Yeah.
There is a letter that has been signed by a lot of experts in the field, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Center for Democracy and Technology, somebody I highly respect, a security researcher and a cryptographer out of Johns Hopkins, Matthew Green, all saying, Apple, stop, this is the wrong thing to do. Most of the complaints involve the slippery slope argument. Some say the slippery slope fallacy, that once you say you can do this, other governments from other countries are going to come to you and say, good, now you have to match against, pictures of Tiananmen Square and, and Tank Man.
The problem is that it may be too late now. Like I think that Apple may have.
They've announced the capability.
Yeah, and
even
the
if they
is
said at this point, we're not going to do it, we now know they can do it. So those countries are going to come to them whether they don't or do.
Yeah. I feel like this is probably Apple trying to head off this absolute, like, you can't get into the phone. The soft point.
Yeah, that's the question. Why did they do this now? I
think it's the soft point for law enforcement that wants to get into your phone for a lot of reasons is always this subject, of child pornography, because it's a soft point because it's indefensible. Like it's a horrible thing, and it needs to, and we have to do, we have to do what we need to do to make that go away. But the problem is because it's so indefensible, they use it all the time on everyone. Well, think about child pornography. Like that's just what the FBI, what everyone uses to pry things open for a variety of other issues as well. And so I think that Apple may be trying to head that off, that argument, especially as they go into, a variety of hearings and so on and so forth in the fall. And so I can see why that they would do that, but I think it is just a stunningly bad idea. I mean, because they just opened up a worm. Like there was we don't know how to do this. We can't do it. We're going to continue to close things off and make it impossible to get in. And then they suddenly went the other direction. And I think it's, for other people, for Google or other, we don't expect to have any privacy. we shouldn't expect to have any privacy.
Well, ironically, you might have more Apple, privacy now with an Android phone than you do with an Apple phone.
And that's the fundamental thing, is that Apple had the problem for Apple is not what they're doing. It's that it's so hard to separate it from the marketing that they already have been doing for so long. And I think that's the real complexity for them.
In this letter, an open letter against Apple's privacy-invasive content scanning technology, which has many thousands of signatures now, this is bold in the first paragraph. Apple's proposal introduces a backdoor that threatens to undermine fundamental privacy protections for all Apple users of Apple products. Is that a fair characterization, Renee?
So I can give you, I'll give you Apple's answer, then I'll give you my answer, because I think both are important. I always like to look at the company's answer because then I can see whether it's true or not. Apple's answer to this, I think, would be they can no longer abide having the CSAM material on their servers, but because of their previous and their current stance on privacy, they just refuse to do server-side scans. They don't want to look at everybody's images on the cloud. And why now, I think, is a twofold answer. One is they've architected the technology that they believe allows them to do, and they really do believe this, in a more private way. Like they see anything on device, and this is where I think there's a big disconnect. They see anything on device as being private, where we see it being on device being private if it's done for us. But when it's being done for somebody else, we see it as incredibly intrusive. And though I think that's a mental disconnect there. But they believe that this is a more privacy-centric way of doing it. And there are a bunch of, I don't
because,
think
by the way, they're presumably scanning your device for viruses, your emails being scanned
and also for
spam.
DRM. Like you can't take a screenshot of a Hollywood movie on your iPhone. On my iPhone, I can't tell you how angry that makes me that I can't take. It's nothing compared to this, obviously, but the simple fact that I can't take a screenshot of a movie. But I'm getting the other thing is there's a bunch of laws. Canada has them. The UK has them. The EU is proposing them, where there's going to be minimal response time and maximum fines for this kind of stuff, and also for some copyright material. And Apple's not deploying it internationally yet, but their legal teams are absolutely looking, like every company, at what the obligations are going to be there.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I should have said this right at the beginning. Nobody on this panel, nobody in their right mind is for protecting child pornographers or CSAM material. That's not the debate at this point, and I don't think.
Nor do we hate privacy.
No.
Yeah,
like you can have a discussion about this without approving of child endangerment. And the other thing I'd say is that Apple's response to the backdoor is they will say emphatically that it is not one, that it was architected to not be one. They understand that governments are going to see that it's one, just like a lot of people are seeing that it's one, and it might increase the pressure. But they say that pressure has always been there. That pressure is there last week. It'll be there next week, and they will go and as often as they have to explain in excruciating detail why it's not a backdoor and why they can't do anything more with it than what they've said they can do.
Yeah.
This is a piece from rentafounder.com. Olivier is a computer scientist who does perceptual hashing and is an expert in forensic perceptual hashing. One of the points he brings up is Apple's claim of a trillion, 1 in a trillion, is on the face of it absurd. It's that's PR, not fact. We don't know what.
So that's being misunderstood too. It's not based on the perceptual hashing. That's based on the entire process, including the human review.
Yeah, and that's why they're doing
the threshold and you add in the human
vouchers.
Review.
Yeah,
that's what
it's still obviously a made-up number.
Misleading.
No one can know what that number is.
It's if people are misunderstanding it, it's because Apple, I think, specifically chose to pick to a methodology that people would not really understand to begin with. So
but
that's
and
totally
I understand Apple saying, look, we're doing everything, but to say it's 1 in a trillion is it's 1 in a cajillion. It's not a reasonable thing to say. So let's say Apple, another mistake.
Also, if I could add just really quickly, I also want to point out that I've spent the last 3 days trying to make sure that all the technology is explained as accurately as possible, but you can just hate this. It is totally fine. If the technology could be the best thing in the world, could be bulletproof, there could be zero issues with it at all, and you can still absolutely legitimately think this is the worst idea ever.
Yeah. So
that's one of if I'm explaining the technology, it's not because I agree with this ethically.
No, we want everybody. That's part of the problem was everybody rushed to judgment. Apple didn't do a good job of communicating it. There were some misunderstandings. I think John Gruber
and some fear mongering with the technology.
And some fear mongering, but John Gruber, I think, did a good job of describing it and pointing out that people like Reed Albergati in the Washington Post had misstated what Apple was doing. I think now, after we've had time to reflect, I think it's important that we explain what this technology is, and then we can think about, well, what are the implications of it?
Argue against what it is, not what you worried that it was going to be.
Right.
Yes.
Ben Thompson, I think, on Stratechery makes the point I would probably agree with most, which is Apple should absolutely have done this with iCloud, as pretty much everybody else has done. Apple's mistake was to extend it to the phone.
And I agree. I think that I don't think any of this would have gone anywhere if it had been iCloud, because they let law enforcement agencies into iCloud all the time.
We know that iCloud's not secure.
They would have gotten headlines anyway, but I don't think it would have been the same.
And some have speculated that maybe that's because Apple was about to do fully end-to-end encrypted iCloud, and in order to forestall the objections from police to that, they introduced the CSAM technology.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and the contact recovery system, which the reason they didn't do that, people say it's because the FBI, they didn't do that before because people lost access to their data. And that was terrible for Apple. They had so many reports of that, so they stopped. Yes. But that will allow, this new thing with iOS 15 will allow them to recover accounts because you can suggest a contact.
Right.
Yeah. There's two things I would like to see with this. If I was in charge of this, if I got my wish list, I would switch the communication protections to not make a notification at all, but to do a block instead, which I think protects the chances of outing and also is in line with how the content parental things happen anyway. And I would also move the stuff off device and into a relay server, the way Private Relay works, because Apple wants zero knowledge. That's fine. But if they could do the hash matching on a separate relay server, that way we would not have it on our devices and Apple would not have full knowledge of the system. And I think in that way, everybody wins. I'm not a privacy engineer. I have no responsibility here whatsoever. But if I had my druthers.
There are potential harms, particularly to that separate kind of scanning that Apple is doing, looking for pornographic images on kids' phones. Kendra Albert, who's a lawyer at the Harvard Law School's Cyber Law Clinic, says that these child protection features are going to get queer kids kicked out of their homes, beaten, or worse. Yeah. She says, I just know, calling it now, that these machine learning algorithms are going to flag transition photos, for instance. And that's going to be a real harm to kids in transition.
Brianna Wu made a similar statement on Twitter.
Yeah. Alex, you started, I want to give you some time to tell us how you feel.
Well, no, I just think the cloud would have been fine. I think even as a parent, I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even as a parent, I am uncomfortable with the idea that it's scanning through my kid's phone.
Extremely, yes.
So the thing is that I have kids that are 12 and 13 years old. They are the target, of what this would be. I mean, they're at the time when you'd have to worry about it, and I would still rather do it in many other ways. We already are pretty careful about what they have access to at home, where they can look at it, all those things. So we think about those things. But I am really uncomfortable with the idea that I have, that we've opened up a window. And for me, I don't think it really affects me that much. I mean, I don't have anything on it that it would scan. I don't have anything, even if they expanded it to all the threats that we're afraid that they're going to expand it to. I doubt I would show up in the radar. And so it's not that I think that it'll affect me or in the future, but I just think that it really goes against what Apple has held up until this moment. The iPhone is the one safe place. And we've had this come up before where we'll hand off iCloud data. We'll serve it on Chinese servers, but the one place that you don't get to go is the phone. And I think that they gave that away, and I think that it's just and I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. I don't think that they couldn't say now, because of pressure, we're not going to do it. I mean, law enforcement would be all over them. Now, this may be a long-standing thing that they've been interacting with law enforcement over years to figure out. So it may not be anything they could have pulled back at any point in time, but I think going down this path is, and I'm almost certain that they're doing it to deflect the constant pressure to open up the phones. So I think that the reason that they're doing this is, they'll say that because it's the right thing, but I think that primarily Apple's doing it to deflect the constant attack from organizations like law enforcement and the Five Eyes and Chinese government and the Russian government to get in. And so they're trying, and this is the soft point. This is the open point in the armor to go through.
That's a really excellent point. We don't know all of the information that Apple has. We can presume that everything we've talked about and everybody else has talked about over the last 5 days, Apple talked about internally before they made this announcement.
Yeah.
And we don't know what kind of pressure they were under.
I mean,
we don't
remember
know why they had
this announcement.
Not everyone happy about it either.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that this discussion started 2 or 3 years ago. This is not like something you build that they built over the summer.
Right.
This is something that is years in the making to build something that's this vast. So I don't think that this is there's no knee jerk here. This is and again, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we found out that this started happening around the San Bernardino, argument,
the conversation, and internal
the conversation,
yeah.
and this is an evolution from that process. So I think that they're doing it to. I actually think they're doing it to protect the phone, from further incursions from law enforcement. But I think that it just opens up just such a wide open gaping hole that I don't know. And as I said, I mean, they're constantly under pressure to continue to open it. And I just think it'll be harder and harder to do that.
The Electronic Frontier
Foundation. They did say specifically about, they tried to address this issue by saying, and this is a quote, "Let us be clear, this technology is limited to detecting CSAM stored in iCloud, and we will not accede to any government's request to expand it."
That would have been perfect. Which is nice, and it is in the fact. However, that doesn't exclude them saying them basically doing Command C, Command V, creating a different version of the system that tags into a different database of hashtags of political content, of religious content.
I mean, we got to remember we're in a country where they told us that they only wanted our social security number so they give us money, and everyone was like, "You're going to use it to tax us," and now they don't even call it our social security number anymore. It's our tax ID number.
ID. Yeah.
So the thing is that what we open up things for is we can have those things, but it's just it always evolves over time, and I think that this is going to be. I don't know for sure, but I think that there is a relatively high possibility that 5 years from now we'll be talking about this week and how this was where it got popped open, and then there's all these other things that are happening. And I don't even know if it'll be in the United States. I think it'll be in other countries where people's privacy is more important to them, than here. In the sense that it's a life and death situation that's going to be more problematic.
To that point, this is what the EFF. Hold on a sec. To that point, this is what EFF said. Take the example of India, where recently passed rules include dangerous requirements for platforms to identify the origins of messages and pre-screened content. New laws in Ethiopia requiring content takedowns of, quote, misinformation in 24 hours may apply to messaging services, and many other countries, often those with authoritarian governments, have passed similar laws. Apple's changes would enable such screening, takedown, and reporting in its end-to-end messaging. The abuse cases are easy to imagine. Governments that outlaw homosexuality might require the classifier to be trained to restrict apparent LGBTQ plus content, or an authoritarian regime might demand the classifier be able to spot popular satirical images or protest flyers. So that's the slippery slope argument, but I have to say, I feel like we're already sliding down it pretty quick here.
There's an addition to what Andy was explaining that I think is an important technical one, is that, and Apple will say this as part of the defense system they've built into this, is that there's only one iOS. Like, there's no separate version of iOS for any individual or any jurisdiction. It's one image that gets downloaded on every phone everywhere, and that adding additional images, like if somebody hacked into CSAM, or if Apple was forced by a company under a security letter to install another database or to add to the database, that would be on every iPhone everywhere, and it would pop up to an American screener the same way it would pop up to a Chinese screener. And that makes it not only unlikely, like in America, they wouldn't really tolerate Tiananmen Square images. The EFF gets it a little bit wrong that Apple can't train this on anything. It's a hash matching. There's no machine learning involved here.
No, wait a minute. That's for the NCMEC hash, but the watching of messages can be. That's a hash.
But that has no
doing.
Reporting. That has no reporting mechanism built into it. So that's only,
as implemented today has no reporting mechanism. But Ethiopia could say, "Hey, you're doing it. Now you have to tell us to."
Yeah. Their defense to that is that could have happened a week ago. Like, this system, like, they could be put under that pressure at any time. It's not unique or novel.
They could have been told, you need to have a system like that. Apple's response should be, it's end-to-end encrypted. We can't, and leave it at that. Now they've opened the Pandora's box by saying, oh, by the way, we're going to do this for this particular instance of people under 18. And
so, again, I'm not saying I agree with this.
I do want to.
I'm not saying I agree with this. Let me just get this one little point in.
Yes.
I'm not defending this, but Apple says that this, like, that communications thing, popping up a warning is equivalent to popping up a warning saying this file is too large, you can't send this over iMessage, and putting a warning up before you send it is equivalent to sticking a sticker on it. So, like, they understand the governments might see this one way, but they think technologically it's not a sea change in any way.
Well, I would disagree, Renee, because you can look at the file size without looking at the file content. Do you think Apple's looking at our file content now?
Well, on the Photos app they are, because they tell you if it's a cat or a dog, or they suggest photo effects for it.
That's true, and that's done on camera, right? I mean, on device. So, yeah, I guess you're right. Apple's already said we know how to do this, and Ethiopia could have said, okay, instead of a cat, we want.
If in live text you see this line of text, please alert us.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good point. They've already opened that door.
Yeah. Just to quickly address, I think Renee might have misunderstood what I was saying. I know there are protections in place so that they can't, a government or an outside bad actor can't simply add content to this database. It is very tightly locked down. However, if another government, ours or someone else's, decided that, hey, this is a great technology, we should insist that they do basically create a second version of this black box that taps into this other database of file hashes, image hashes that we provide for them that contains political content that we want to keep an eye on, religious content we want to keep an eye on, or any other content that we want to keep an eye on. So this box, as it's being installed, is safe from that sort of thing. But now that, as kind of like what Alex has said, now that Apple has said, hey, look, we've got this really, really slick and secure system that will on device check files check image files on this device to see if it contains content that an outside party deems objectionable outside of Apple. Great, build us one of those. You can keep the one that you built for the child abuse images, but build us one so that anytime so we can get a lock on that those Winnie the Pooh images of our fearless leader that keep being posted on Weibo.
Well, and I think that the Chinese government doesn't care whether they don't need you to focus on anyone. They would love to know where propaganda images show up anywhere in the world. And so the thing is that those, getting that information, they could be asking Apple to do those kinds of things, and that's the thing that I think is going to be really complicated. It just feels like a briar patch, that's going to be really difficult to get out of.
What I find curious is why
ethically wrong, regardless of the technology.
So let me let's. I want to ask each of you. Start with Renee. What should Apple do at this point?
Yeah, I think that they should switch the reporting. They should switch the parental notification to a parental block, so the parent doesn't have any knowledge of the specific photos. It just blocks the kid from getting it. And I think they should move the on-device matching into a separate relay server, the way Private Relay works, so that they're not on our device. It's like the warehouse company doesn't get to come to my house and look at the stuff before I store it at the warehouse place. Even if they're picking it up, they don't get to look through the boxes before they pick it up. Just get, if you want to do that at the warehouse. And if Apple wants zero knowledge, put in a relay server so they only ever have the first layer of decryption on the relay server, the second layer of decryption at Apple, and then I think they get what they want, and the argument about invasiveness goes away.
You agree, Andy? What would you recommend?
I don't think Apple has made a strong case for why they have to do this processing on device instead of in the cloud. I think that the only practical reason I come up with is that maybe they simply don't want to have to burn up their own server CPU cycles doing these hash matches. They would much rather burn CPU cycles on the device to do that instead. The industry has done this on cloud servers across the industry. There's precedent for it. If people have objections to this, they will not have any new objections to the way that Apple's doing it if they're doing it on the cloud. And I think that Renee made a very good point, that I think that just culturally, Apple believes that, hey, if I do this on device, that by its very nature, this makes it more private and safe than doing it on one of the servers that we ourselves own. And I also think that a lot of the fine details about this need to be reevaluated, such as, again, keeping kids safe, not only from predators online, but from their own parents and their own guardians. I don't think that, at minimum, enough people have been satisfied that this is a safe system for children that are in danger in that way. At worst, I think that there are indeed serious flaws that Apple should be compelled to address. So this has not been done exceptionally well, I think.
What do you think, Alex? What should Apple do?
I don't think there's anything to be done. like I think that they just stay the course at this point. I mean, there's not really any. They can't pull back. I mean, they're not going to be able to, enforcement agencies and everything else. They've opened up a can of worms. They've opened up a Pandora's box that can't be closed. And I think that I agree probably with Renee that that's what I would love to see them do. I don't think they're going to. I think that it's now you just kind of batten down the hatch and just try to weather the next 2 or 3 weeks and hope people let it wander off. But I think that it just really undermines the user trust that they've spent so much time building, around the device. I think that's the real challenge is how do they get themselves out of that.
Would this, Alex, was this change your decision to use an iPhone?
No. No. I'm frustrated, but I'm not gonna. Where am I gonna go?
Andy, you're already an Android user. Would you not use an iPhone because of this?
No, but if this had been as bad as people had been worrying before, if there had been a proactive on-device scanning of photos on device, if any situation in which the device is constantly scanning for evidence that I might have committed a crime, that's a hard damn no. That is I would have been I might have even stopped using my iPad if that had been a part of the rules of using it. That I am a suspect simply by virtue of the fact that I'm putting photos on this device. That's a hard no. But that's not the case here.
How about you, Renee? Would this change your I think you kind of have to use the iPhone.
No, but I mean, I walked away from Microsoft because they weren't serving my needs. I'd walk away from Apple in a heartbeat if they stopped serving my needs. With this, the easy out is not an easy out; it's a horrible out. But the out is like you don't enable those services. You don't have a choice, or turn off photo library because that turns off the entire system at the hash generation level. Turn off iCloud photo library, nothing gets processed on your device. The bigger concern I have right now is that we are, as a people, we are no longer like 20 years ago. We have such high brand affinity and such low attention span that, and I'm not doing this for false equivalency or to try to like whataboutism it, but like every company has their scandal. Samsung has exploding phones, and Sony rootkits people, and Lenovo does person in the middle attacks for adware, and the list, and Google like steals Wi-Fi. Like the list goes on, and we don't, like 2 weeks later we don't even think about it. And that's like, and Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and PsyOps, we don't even think about it anymore. There's no long-term consequences of doing these things. It becomes a 2-week news cycle, and then we forget about it. And a lot of stuff is so important. It should never happen. And my fear is that, like, again, in 2 weeks, no one will be talking about it.
Well, and that's probably the argument for why Apple should just stay the course at this point, because how are they going to lose any business? Probably
we'll
not.
get new iPhones and we'll forget, right? There'll be an iPhone 13, it'll be shiny, and we'll forget.
Yeah.
It just makes it less clear. Like, it's just, and I think that's going to be the hard part. And I think that we, as, I mean, our governments are very afraid of us, because people are able to organize at a level that has never been in the history of mankind, has never been possible, and so we just have to be very careful of where they're taking away our ability to do that, because a lot of this is coming from governments being very afraid that they're losing positive control of their population, and so we just have to be very, very, and this is all governments, not just the Chinese and the Russians.
Exactly.
And so, and because the population now can self-organize very, very fast, and for good and bad.
For good and for ill.
Yeah. So, but I think that, so governments are afraid of that. But I think that we have to be very careful about how quickly this becomes something that we really wish hadn't happened.
Yeah, one of the broader things that I've been thinking about over the weekend, the first step to larger clarity over my feelings on this issue is I do believe that as a large principle that we have the right to control the devices that we own, and that usually I speak about that in terms of if I have a phone, I should be able to do whatever I want with it. If I should be able to install whatever software I want, I should be able to replace the bootloader if I want to do that. But I also believe that applies to Apple, that they own the iCloud server. They have the right to control whether or not this is being used to transact imagery and content that they feel as though they have a power to stop. And so within the limitations that this is only a feature that happens if I choose to put my photos onto their servers, that's the linchpin of my acceptance of Apple's, not necessarily the rightness of them doing this, but their ability to do this, and why I have to respect that right of them to do it. Implementation is a different thing, but I will absolutely not say that it's not right for the owner of a server to want to control how that server is being used out in the world, and the damage that's being done to people through hardware that they're buying, they're maintaining, that they're maintaining the connection to. They have that right, just as I feel as though I have the right to do whatever I want with my phone.
Yeah, I think that I don't have any problem with cloud servers making sure that no stuff they don't want, whether it's child pornography or a copyrighted material, is stored there. That's their right, and they should be able to do that, and you have the right not to use them. Is it the case, Renee, that if I turn off iCloud photo sharing, all three of these initiatives stop? Like even the teenage? No. They still scan phones.
No, the parent is control. Yeah, the parent is in control of the parent can choose to enable it or not enable it for the Messenger safety feature, because that's under parental controls. You for the CSAM detection, if you turn off iCloud Photo Library, it's only done on upload. And the way it's architected is that it requires a server-side secret to even open the headers on the that wrap up. The vouchers are double wrapped basically, and the headers can't even open. But Apple has said earlier today, they did an interview with Matthew Panzarino on TechCrunch, that once you turn that off, the entire system just dies. It's like nothing. They're not even generating neural hashes anymore at that point.
So that's just for people to know. That's the way you can privatize
the sad thing
your
with this,
phone.
though, is that iCloud, regardless of, some people are just privacy absolutists. Doesn't matter if it's like terrorist propaganda or CSAM. They just don't believe anyone has any business to look at their stuff. And until now, iCloud was an option because Apple just wasn't looking at anything. Google was, Microsoft was, and now there's no mainstream. There's not even any boutique options. You've got to basically sync over a cable to your Mac or PC and then handle your own offsite backups from there. So it does for people who are fundamentalist privacy absolutists. They have no easy option anymore.
I should, by the way, recommend youtube.com/Rene Ritchie. His most recent video, The Ugly Truth About Apple's Privacy Panic, is a very clear description of what they're doing. Exactly how it works. So if you are still, kind of in mystery about all this, and I wouldn't be surprised if you are, I know I am, that's the place to go. I like you, Renee. I stopped using Windows because I was tired of Microsoft for a variety of reasons, and I'm very happy using Linux. You can, there is an option if you want to get away from all this, to go to an Android device, probably a Pixel, and then replace the stock Android with something like Calyx OS, which is a privacy-focused ROM that is Android, but is de-Googled. So it is, I think, if you care, there are ways to. I think you probably can't get away from it entirely.
It's less convenient. The service, because the services it requires so much money to do the convenient services. That's the whole problem here. Why we use this stuff, why we make these deals, why we use Facebook, why we use Google is because it is so good.
Yeah. I have to say, before next month and my decision to buy another iPhone, and probably before October in my decision to buy another MacBook Pro, I'm going to really have to think hard about this. I'm very happy with Linux. I probably will buy the new Pixel phone, and I'll put Calyx on it. And if those two solutions suit, I might well do that. Not so much just as a statement, that I want to use privacy-forward stuff.
I agree. I'm not ready to abandon more popular commercial operating systems for open source for Linux. However, I'm keeping my toe in Linux because it's a great operating system and it's a great resource. And I like to just like when I board a plane, I like to know where all the exits are, because you never know which one of them is going to be useful to you at any given moment. So this is why even though I was an iPhone user, I was keeping very, very hip to what was going on Android, so that at the moment when it felt like, gee, I really do prefer the features of Android, I knew where that exit was, I was able to go. Similarly, when I felt like Apple was not making Macs that were in any way reasonable for what my needs are, I had the exit for I had the Lenovo ThinkPad picked out that I was going to be buying. On and on and on. You have to know where your exits are and know how to use each one of them in each kind of crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to think about these things. Like I said, they won't let you take a screenshot of a Hollywood movie. An explicit image will never show up in the photo widget on your home screen, like that, because they know it's explicit. Like they are increasingly, like Google, Apple, everybody, Microsoft, they're increasingly acting like our parents. And the worst part is you shouldn't have to feel like a criminal if you don't like that and you're exploring other options. But now you have the presumption of something like, why? What do you have to hide? And that's the worst, most cliched hailstorm of hot takes out of all of this, is that you're made to feel that way if you just want to have something that's yours.
Yeah. It's it's a challenge for me because I'm supposed to cover Apple products. I'm supposed to cover Windows products. It's part of my job, and I'll still have those. But my preferred choice is something more privacy forward.
You'll have a Stream Deck.
And right. And at some point, when I retire, I think it's pretty clear to me that I will abandon those invasive operating systems, because I don't want to support them.
It is insidious, though, the way a lot of these things work. I think you mentioned a really good privacy forward operating system you can install on any Android phone that has an open bootloader. But the question becomes, are you okay with not having access to Lyft and Uber? Are you okay with not having access to your banking app? Not all apps, even though it is technically an offshoot of Android and it tries to be as compatible as possible, that doesn't necessarily mean that all these services that you have told yourself you absolutely can't do without are going to be compatible with this freedom, this paradise of freedom that you're creating for yourself. So a lot of it really, a lot of the stuff that goes into our material lives of, do I really need to have all of these books? Do I really need to have all of this electronics gear? How much of this is superfluous? How much of this is just self-soothing? A lot of this has to happen with our dependence on apps, on services, on third-party data. We have to understand what this device is, how it's there to serve us, and to what a degree we are giving up our freedom by accepting some convenience. Well,
and I think that while I'm disappointed with what Apple did, I think we need to be realists about how much freedom, how much privacy we really have. There is the level of tracking. I was obsessive about it in the 90s, like really just obsessive about not giving up anything ever and buying things with cash and really not playing at all. And I think that after some work that I did, I realized how deep the the thing went, and I was kind of like, well, might as well just not be interesting, because it's very, very difficult to get out of the net. And so I think that we can do a lot of those things, but if we interact with the outside world, we're building a pretty searchable database. And I think that I feel like the problem is that Apple there was at least one place that my frustration is I felt like there was at least one place that we had at least some semblance of that, and that place is now it's not over, it just has a gap now that didn't exist before.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I said this on the radio show on the weekend, once you go down the rabbit hole of I want to be private, you end up living in a cabin in the woods off the grid. Because it's very difficult.
They don't even need to ask for this stuff. Like, we'll give it, like Pokemon Go says, I'll hatch your eggs if you give us permanent location status. And I'm like, I don't even think about it. I'm like, really? You'll hatch my eggs? And I'm like thinking about privacy all the time.
Hatch my eggs,
I saw a bunch of people. Xiaomi announced their own version of the Spot Dog, the Boston Dynamics Spot Dog today. And that thing is just reported. And people are like, I don't care. I want it. I don't care what data it takes. I want, if you make something shiny, the debates evaporate. Humans are the darndest creatures.
And it sounds like we've given up. It's like, okay.
No. I think that's why we're
giving us junk food.
Another item on this that I was telling you about earlier is just the fact that you have to respect the difference between an academic argument and a practical argument. Like, there was ways that I think of a certain situation, meaning that inside this room devoid of any outside feedback, of any repercussions that I can't imagine, I believe that my power over this device should be absolutely sacrosanct. However, outside, when it becomes a practical thing where here are the numbers of how technology is being abused in this way, here's how easily that a technological solution can not solve this problem, but at least blunt this problem, and every 5% you can knock down that problem with are 5% of people that are not going to suffer the way that they are being made to suffer right now. That's not an answer to the question. However, that means that you can't just simply say, the entire world is going to be happy that I, as your supreme ruler of all things, have decided to make sure that everything can be encrypted top to bottom, inside and out. There is no circumstance under which law enforcement can take hold of your data or your material. And then I don't want to find out 10 years later that this is why World War IV happened, and it was all because of 800 individual armies, each doing horrible things inside the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
That's a slippery slope argument.
I'm not. I wasn't making a slippery slope argument. I'm saying I'll give a more
privacy
practical.
leads to the next World War.
No. I'll give a quick and more practical thing that's actually from my own internal arguments. People who work in the sex industry. I believe in principle that two consenting adults that want to engage in a transaction, I don't think that I have the ability, or the law has the ability, to say that this thing that does not harm anybody else, again, inside this academic bubble of two people, of the person who's working in this industry, having full knowledge, full power, full control, full consent. However, the thing that makes me stop from, if this were a ballot measure that I could vote on, I would have great difficulty navigating the problem of, okay, academically you are in favor of this. However, do you know that this will not result in more abuse of people? Is this going to create more problems of people being brought into this country for the purpose of essentially slavery? I have to. That's the difference between an academic argument and then having to have a separate argument about how will this principle affect the real world? What damage could this create that I'm not dealing with because, again, I'm just leaning back in my chair, having a beverage and stroking my beard.
Yeah. Incidentally, this just came out in Mac Rumors. Apple today held a question and answer session with reporters regarding these features. During the briefing, Apple confirmed it would be open to expanding the features to third-party apps in the future.
Yeah, that's getting misreported a lot. So my understanding of this is that what they meant was they're about to launch a screen time API. It's part of iOS 15 because they had that whole controversy over other apps that were trying to do parental controls. And this is not part of that yet, but they are to or thinking about whether they should make the automatic photo blurring available. So, for example, if like not any of the other things, like not CSAM, because they literally can't. Apple is reviewing that stuff on their own in their own company. But if, for example, Snapchat wanted to easily add a way to blur explicit photos, they could just add that API, and then you'd have to click through to see a photo. They could do that on their own. They don't need Apple for this. It's just easy for
instance, we can all think of groups that for which social media is a nightmare, specifically because of unsolicited nudes and suggested material that gets sent to them.
Hot dog pics.
And so that's an area in which, although it's like, oh my God, I don't want this to spread. I don't want every single app to suddenly be scanning photos and reporting to CSAM. But nonetheless, this is it would be an interesting thing if this other version of this neural network based scanning were to be available to chat apps and other things like that.
I don't want to make light of this, but there's a video from Alana Pierce, really famous YouTuber, games journalist, who said that her only recourse became storing all the hot dog pictures she got and then responding with slightly bigger hot dog pictures every time, because that was the only thing she could think of to get people to desist. And some people would really welcome an ability not to be shown this stuff immediately on delivery.
Let's take a break. That was a very good conversation, as I fully expected from the three of you. I appreciate it.
I adore you people.
Alex Lindsay, Renee Ritchie, Andy Anako. Great to have all three.
I'm so glad I'm having this conversation with you three a couple of days before I have to go on the radio and talk about this to all of Boston.
Oh, yeah.
This is like...
That's my attitude, too.
We're the club that Andy tests the material on before he goes to the Apollo.
No.
We're the warm-up audience.
Yeah. If it explodes on the launch pad with us, he's not going to use it.
Yeah, he's not at the Apollo.
You three are keeping Sandman Sims off the stage, and I thank you for it.
No, seriously is why I do these shows. I want to be informed, and so the best thing I could think of is get very smart people that I know in and tell me what it means.
And they learn me.
Tell me what it means.
Learn me. Teach me.
Teach me. You know who's going to teach you tonight? Udacity, our sponsor for this segment of Mac Break Weekly. Udacity is a fantastic online learning solution geared for people who, love technology and want to take their knowledge to the next level. They've got content no one else does, but that's kind of because of the origins of Udacity. Started by a Googler, Sebastian Thrun, who said, we're not getting, even with graduates, PhDs, the quality of employees we need. There needs to be a better way to train people to have the skills that we need. Udacity has nanodegrees now with all the industry leaders, Microsoft, Google, IBM, AWS. You'll see team leads from those companies as your instructors, which means you're really learning from the people who are on the ground doing this stuff day in, day out. And you can get these nanodegrees they're not available anywhere else in amazing areas. Would you like to become an autonomous flight engineer or design flying cars? They've got a degree for that. AI, deep learning, intro to self-driving cars, machine learning engineer, robotic software engineer. The thing I really appreciate about Udacity is it's hands-on. They understand that it's one thing to learn the material, and of course they've got the great videos, the great instructors, so you can watch the lectures, but then you've got to apply what you've learned to get that nanodegree. All the courses are project-based, active learning. So, for instance, you'll have to do one or more projects to show that you've understood the material and can apply it. All your homework, all your projects will be reviewed by qualified professionals. You get code reviews like you would in the real world, real human feedback. And don't worry, you're not on your own, because Udacity has a very strong mentorship program, and you can have mentors. You talk to your peers 24/7. That's important too, because Udacity understands a lot of you have a day job and you want to get these skills in your free time. Udacity's flexible schedules mean you can put in 5 to 10 hours a week, work at your own pace any time of the day or night, and still graduate in as little as 3 months. This is a scary stat. The World Economic Forum says 75 million jobs that exist today will be replaced by automated processes in the next 3 years. 3 years. You may well have one of those jobs. Heck, I might have one of those jobs. Maybe now's the time to get some training in a job that's going to exist 3 years from now. Udacity prepares its students for the jobs of the future. I think the thing to do, and I've said this before, is to go to Udacity.com, look at the course listings, and find something that excites you. Because A, you'll do better, you'll enjoy it, and you'll be better at it just because it's something that excites you. And I guarantee you, there's something exciting for everybody at Udacity.com/twit. And if, by the way, you're a business, Udacity for Enterprise helps your team master those cutting-edge technologies they're going to need, like data science, AI, cybersecurity. Upskill your entire workforce with Udacity's world-famous, real-world project-based learning. Make sure you check out the Enterprise section at Udacity's website as well. They have free courses, flexible payment options. You can learn at your own pace and schedule. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career. And we've got an amazing deal. Go to Udacity.com/twit, Udacity, Udacity. It's like Audacity without the A. Get ready for this. 75% off any program. Please use the offer code TWIT75 for this. This will not last long, so please take advantage of it now. Udacity.com/twit. The offer code is TWIT75. Thank you, Udacity. Some great, I've taken courses, they're great. Udacity.com/twit. The offer code TWIT75. Please use that offer code so they know you saw it here. I know you're smart and you could just go to Udacity.com, but A, you want the 75% off. That's smart. And B, you want to support us, right? Hey, speaking of supporting us, I do encourage anybody who watches our shows and wants to support the Twit Network to join Club Twit. This is our way of becoming less dependent on advertising, less dependent on tracking, and give you more of what you want. You get 3 benefits. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You don't even hear this promo in your Club Twit feed, audio or video. I guess there's no reason really to promote Club Twit to people who are already members. You get access to our great Club Twit Discord, which is a heck of a lot of fun. Really enjoy it. It's a community now of smart, interesting Club Twit members. You have to be in the club to join, although all of our hosts are in there. I know Renee's right now in our Mac Break Weekly conversation. There's also the Twit Plus. By the way, one of the benefits of the Discord is animated GIFs. So I know we have an IRC, but those animated GIFs in the Twit Discord really speak to me.
The memes.
Join us. You also get a Twit Plus feed with stuff that's not anywhere else, including show conversations before and after the show with our hosts, special Q&As, AMAs, our Untitled Linux show. I think I'm going to do I have to do something for the Twit Plus feed. I haven't decided what to do yet, but I think I should do a show as well. So there will be benefits that you can't get anywhere else. If you want to know more, Club Twit is at twit.tv/clubtwit. Yay, says Renee Ritchie. Yay. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with that. Now, moving right along. Suicide Squad.
It's the memes. It's the memes, Leo. The memes are the best thing ever. They're just.
I love the animated GIFs.
Memes.
I love the animated GIFs. I probably do some more of that. I was streaming my Valheim conquests. Got a little less active because I conquered all the bosses, and I'm waiting for the updates to Valheim to add some new bosses. But I've redesigned my my living space in Valheim and stuff, so I should probably do a feed to update you. That was part of the Club Twit as well.
Memes are the most informationally dense communication form humans have ever invented.
It's amazing. One picture is worth 1,000,000 words.
Yeah, they are now because they move.
They move. Thumbs up or thumbs down on the Suicide Squad. Renee, I know, and Renee, and you're all comic book fans. Yes?
7. I said 7 out of 10. I really love James Gunn. It was really funny. It was a little bit too violent. Like I have a lower violence threshold than a lot of people, so it was way violent. But there was so many characters that it didn't resonate with me for each character the way Guardians of the Galaxy
No, because
did.
there's like a giant rubber shark and a.
No, he's great. Bird. It's Sylvester Stallone as a giant shark. What more do you want in life? It is. There you go. So Georgia Dow has an amazing video up just on King Shark. She put it up yesterday about friendship, about how a giant shark learns to have friends.
Aw. Oh yeah, you could use that, huh? So you say 7 out of 10. Andy, have you seen it yet?
I've seen it. I would say 8 out of 10.
Oh,
especially if you've been scared off by, oh my God, it's a comic book movie, which means that I'll have to have seen like 2 TV series, 8 different movies, and I still won't learn what went on until like another 2 series that come out in the future. It is a very much it's there to entertain you for a couple hours. It knows what it's about, and Harley Quinn, for heaven's sakes, this is one of the best movie characters in comics movies ever.
And she's more Paul Dini again. She's not the harlotized.
Right. They had a couple articles about how Margot Robbie was. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name.
Margot Robbie.
Margaret.
Thank you very much. I was tripping on the second name. Yeah, she and the director were like talking about, let's move her forward a little bit. So let's just say she had this tattoo taken off her face, a property of the Joker. Let's have that changed to property of myself, and making her into something more like what we kind of more of the kind of character that we less feel sorry for and feel afraid for, and more feel rooting for and afraid of. Yes, exactly. This is why in the comics particularly, when written well, you're rooting for her while being terrified of her. She's like the word because her heart's in the right place, but she has very, very severe impulse problems. Yes.
Alex, I'm sure you haven't seen it, but
I haven't. Here's the worst part is I really enjoyed the first one, and I was really excited to see the second one, and it just was like my schedule. I just kept on going, I'm going to sit down and watch it, and then I didn't. Yeah. so it's
but when you watch it, you see the bad compositions and stuff. Like it must be like a typographer looking at street signs when you watch it.
The first one I thought was pretty good. I mean, I thought that it was. I thought that most of the effects were pretty good, and it was just a fun ride.
The specular highlight is a little bit off on the left.
I tried it so hard.
Yeah, it's a little rough, but overall, I was excited about the first one, and I'm ready to watch the second one. Just haven't gotten the time to sit down and do it.
There's something wrong with me, I guess, because everybody's told me how great this movie was. Lisa and I
it'll be there whenever you get around to it. It'll still be there.
We watched a little bit of it. I like the first half hour.
A lot of people I know didn't like it. Mutual friends of ours didn't like it. I've never seen a worse movie.
I would have walked out of it if I'd seen it in the theater. I would have walked out. We did walk out. We stopped watching it. But so I guess it's just not for me. It's not for my. Here I am wearing a plaid suit and a plaid shirt. Obviously, I have no taste.
You're Perry White. You're not Jimmy Olsen.
I'm afraid my problem is I've been falling into all these documentaries that are sitting on Netflix and other things, and I'm having a hard time watching the movies because like there's one called This Is Pop that's just like all the Swedish sound and pitch shifting and how festivals started, and it shows Steve Wozniak and how his the US Festival and what it meant and everything else.
So that's what I'm going to watch.
This is Pop, and then the movies that made us. There's some pretty good ones.
That's a little. It's trashy, but it's still fun. It's really fun.
No, the funny thing, the movies that made us, if you go to, if you look at the Jurassic Park one, you will not see the license plate, but you will see my car. So
what?
They were shooting at the old ILM stage, and they had asked for access last year, so I knew that they were shooting it, but they shot this shot in the back behind it, and my car's there.
Is that a mistake, or is it fit in with the...
my car has anything to do with the story. It just has to do with the fact that it would just happen to be there when they shot the establishing shot. And so
that's hysterical.
And they're talking to Spaz Williams
I see in the documentary,
Park.
Not in the movie. I got it.
Yeah. No. My car was actually hidden in Jurassic Park. It's a little extra. Yeah. No, I wasn't working at ILM, but
Can I just give you one piece of advice? If you don't see the Justice League movie, the game trailer for the Justice League video game last year, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that is like a 2-minute perfect mini movie that I've actually had to download it and put it on my media server because it is like a perfect 2-minute long movie that makes you love this team hugely. So that won't be my pick of the week, but I'm saying that seek this out. I actually pasted the YouTube link from DC Comics in the show notes, but it is exceptional.
I'm gonna have to play the game. Actually, it looks like a pretty good game.
Yeah. But they built this trailer like they're shooting a 2-minute long movie. It's not like, play your favorite characters.
In a world where Batman and Robin are crazy. I loved Arkham Asylum. I thought they did a good job with that. I like that dark style. Yeah. Metropolis. Look at Metropolis. Ooh.
What If starts this week on Disney Plus.
What if?
So
What is what if?
What if?
Yeah.
What if it's like if you'd make one change? Like I think the first episode is what if Peggy Carter became Captain America instead of Steve Rogers?
Yeah.
And then they ask those kinds of questions every week.
This is part of the reason I don't enjoy these is because I have no idea who those people are. I don't.
Yeah, see, that's my problem with Marvel's cinematic universe. I'm glad that so many people love it. They're obviously doing some great stuff that people love. I just can't get into it because I don't have time to do the homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a Marvel fan. I've read most of the stories these things were based on, and it's like, oh God, why do I? What's the orange glowing thing, and why do I not know what it is, and why are they not explaining it to me, and why does everybody want it?
Because you didn't read the 13 different variant comics out of Crisis on Infinite Earths and Secret Wars. Clearly, Andy, it was 20 years ago. It set up everything.
There's stuff about the next Star Wars movie I'm not going to be able to understand unless I spend $4,000 to stay in the Star Wars Starship Hotel at Disney World. It's not right. I'm telling you.
Yeah. You know, I was appalled by how much they're charging, and then I thought to myself, I wonder if I can afford that.
I know, right?
I was like, how
and now
dare
Justine
they?
has her lightsabers. It makes you so like Justine and Serenity have their lightsabers.
I was like, I bet you that's really good.
In my opinion, for $4,000, it has to be open world. It can't be. By the way, you have to choose the time that you get to visit the Millennium Falcon. And well, no, you can't go to this section of the ship yet because you're not scheduled to see it until no, screw you, $4,000. If I want to use the employee bathroom, I get to use the employee bathroom for $4,000.
I go to a class of exercise class in fact tomorrow with the woman whose husband has designed that hotel. He works at ILM, so you would think I could maybe ask for a discount, but no. I think Lisa and I may do it, man.
Alex worked on the movies and they don't give him a.
I know. She's a big Star Wars fan, and I'm very.
This is like tangentially related.
I ain't going to Florida anytime in the next year, but when it's safe to go to Florida, I think I might.
I have a bunch of friends cancel their trips because it's a huge Quebec destination. It's a huge Quebec vacation destination, and nobody's willing to go anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. We go there and wear Speedos on the beaches, Leo. That's what we're known for.
Oh God,
that's all we do.
Oh God. So
they don't want us there.
A new rumor from Mark Gurman, who says, the next iPhone is not going to be a massive update. I don't think they're going to call it the 12S, but maybe
Did you say nude rumor because my phone blocked it?
That nude rumor, you see, you can't get nude rumors anymore.
I just got a blur.
Apple's next.
Mr. Ritchie,
get out.
Can you please come out, sir?
I'm glad you guys can joke about that.
Take a seat.
So the new phone will have at least 3, according to Gurman. And by the way, we're like weeks away, right? We're maybe 4.
Where did 2021 go?
Yeah,
like seriously.
What do we have a prediction for the event? It won't be Labor Day, obviously. So that means it'll probably be the 7th.
Might be later than usual.
Yeah, the 14th, maybe. Yeah.
Usually it would be the what is it? The
Labor Day is the 6th, so they wouldn't do it on the 7th. So they're gonna have to do it on the 14th. That's what they did last year too, right?
Sometimes they've done the Wednesday because of Labor Day, so it would be the 8th or the 14th. But there's been rumors that it'll be slightly later just because of manufacturing. But it's hard to tell.
So we're about a month off from the iPhone 13. Will it be a 13? They're not going to worry about superstition, are they? I hope.
There was an A13. There's 13-inch. They sell 13-inch MacBooks. They sell. I mean, they may. The thing is, like, that's it used to be Phil Schiller. Now it's Greg Joswiak, I guess. They walk into a room and they say, "This is what's going on the boxes and the posters," and like nobody has to know until. Usually, what happens is they have a big list. They have their preferred name on the top, and then they have a bunch of alternative names in case one of those names means something bad in another country. Like for example, we can't use this because in all the Saudi countries it means XYZ instead. Oh, okay. So like MacBook Air, I think was the 12-inch MacBook was MacBook Stealth originally, and then they turned it out they hated that name. So they go through it and then they pick a name, but it's no more or less precious than that. So it could be iPhone, anything, whatever they want.
Right. It will be.
Doesn't have to make any sense.
Better cameras.
They just go back to it's now called iPhone.
iPhone.
And there is no number. And then we'll have the same confusion we have with iPads. Like I don't know which one I have.
Yeah.
We know that or Gurman says, and I think it's reasonable to assume it will have a new, faster A15 chip in it.
Yeah.
We've also seen that the display cutout is a little bit smaller. The notch is a little bit smaller.
And that'll be on TSMC's new 5 nanometer process. It won't go down yet, but it's going to be on there. I think it's 5 nanometer P or something.
Yeah. It also, though, the biggest thing will be the camera enhancements, according to Gurman. The new handsets will include a video version of the portrait mode, which is nice. You'll also be able to record video in a higher quality format called ProRes, and a new filters-like system that improves the look and color of photos, according to people familiar with the matter.
With Alex Moore.
So what is ProRes? Do we have any idea?
Well, is it
the ProRes?
It's some version of ProRes. I don't know what.
It's ProRes.
It's ProRes. It's just going to record in ProRes, Apple ProRes.
It's like Final Cut ProRes.
It's like RAW for stills.
Well, it's not RAW.
I know, because you can never do RAW video.
And I don't know whether they're going to do all of them. I'm not clear whether it'll be the same ProRes. It might be phone ProRes or something. But Apple ProRes comes in a variety of different flavors, from 444 to HQ and 422 and a variety of different, and then LT and other ones there. All of them are better than the current version that records to the iPhone, because they the current version, if you take a good example is take a 4K video and you set it to HDR or whatever, and you take it of trees, a lot of trees, and then you zoom in on that, and what you're going to see is like what looks like a little just designs, because it just can't hold all that data. Blowing trees, it can't hold all that data in the frames. Apple ProRes will let them do that, and also let them have a higher bit depth, so 10-bit and so on and so forth. Now it'll chew up. I have a feeling that it's not going to necessarily be the same.
Can't be 444 because you wouldn't have space to record, right?
Well, I think that it would be unlikely that they would implement exactly what they have there, because again, it's not uncompressed. It is compressed, but it's perceptually very, very good.
Right.
And so, but it's not like HEVC. Right? I mean, it's way more data. What?
I think what people are hoping is that it'll record internally, and it'll also let you do what Apple does, which is the preview modes that are still good enough, but are tied to the original files, so that you can edit them much more quickly than you would otherwise. Sort of the proxying, forget what they call it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, whether it's pixel for pixel and how they're going to implement that. But the goal will be probably that you have a lot more to edit. Like, you're really turning the phones into real capture devices. Right now, they're still kind of toys. When it comes to it, it's cool that they can do what they do, and they do an amazing job.
They're pretty good.
But the quality of the capture, as someone who captures on bigger cameras, is you're still like, oh, it's cute. But the sensor and the lenses stand way out. What's the weak point right now that I think Apple's getting ready to address is what it saves it in to the phone. And again, you'll run out of drive space really fast depending on how they do it. My guess is it's going to be some version of ProRes that is not what we normally think of as ProRes. It'll be some version for the phone that's way better than HEVC, but not the ProRes that we're used to cutting. But I could be wrong.
Is HEVC that bad? It's pretty. I thought it was pretty. It was pretty good.
HEVC is really good. I mean, it's really efficient for what it is. Yeah. You just have to, it's not the replacement for a true, because it's also what we call long GOP, which means that it saves very few. It's painted. It needs to have all the frames there, so it's cutting it becomes harder. It becomes a little more sluggish, and so it's. What HEVC is really good at is taking a really, really big image and making it a really small image and keeping an enormous amount of the fidelity, but it's not keeping all the fidelity. As you go into ProRes, you're going to get into a possibility of keeping a lot more of that fidelity that's just impossible, and it just means it's going to be much, much larger files. So it's not that it's, but people who want to use the phone that way potentially could, and it could mean that they're also going to put much more memory in some of the phones. So the Pro version might have a couple terabytes or whatever in it, as far as memory as well.
Yeah.
And you have to transfer it over Wi-Fi because they're not giving you USB-C or Thunderbolt.
Am I foolish to think that this quote filters
let me live in delusion for at least another year, Renee. Let me believe that I will not live long enough to see a portless iPhone. As sad as that might be, that I die before 2022.
I think that there's a high probability that it may be portless, but it doesn't mean that it will not have those kind of contacts that we see inside the iPad that could potentially support
40 gigabits per second. That's what I want.
Way more convenient than USB-C. Thank God. Thank you, Apple, for giving us pogo pins instead of a USB-C port.
There's always a Google Pixel 6 with the Calyx OS on it, Andy. For you, hardcore.
I'll drive over that cliff in that convertible with you. I want to die with you, Thelma.
Got MKV and Og Vorbis editing just a step away.
There's something satisfying, by the way, about moving to a cabin in the woods and being off the grid. I'm just saying.
If you do patent encumbered Linux, it's even more fun.
Oh, God. So they do call... So Gurman says a new filters-like system that improves the look and colors of photos. Reading between the lines, maybe a LUT system of some kind? Or what do you think that is?
Maybe they'll bring Gotham back now that Instagram is showing they're never going to do that.
I'm sorry, I do
LUTs
not get those references. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, being able to apply LUTs would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Have it kind of built in, and it opens up a whole new set of things that are, and LUTs for people who are listening are basically what they're lookup tables. So they basically just say transfer. It's like a curve that you'd see in Photoshop, but imagine that in 3D. And so it's just moving the color information in the color inside of, if you think of color as a cube, it's moving it inside of that space so that you can do very delicate transforms. And they come in different numbers of points of resolution, but anyway, it's how a lot of us transform a lot of video.
And it's it's not to say that you would want, I know you would, but I would want to do this 3D manipulation, but that if they used a standard like that for filtering, people like Alex could create LUTs that you could then download.
Well,
and there are apps that do LUTs now. I mean, I think that you can do LUTs with Filmic Pro, and I think some of that stuff is already there. It's not like it doesn't exist, but having it really easy and part of the phone, and just something like, oh, I can load a LUT, into it. There's a lot of LUTs out there that would be people would really enjoy.
Yeah.
So you get to see what it looks like when you shoot it.
Am I crazy to kind of read between the lines on the new filters-like system and think maybe that's LUTs?
That's if you didn't know what a LUT was, that might be how you'd describe it.
Yeah, exactly.
Leo,
it's like filters, but they're not.
It's not real, so it could be anything we want it to be. When they announce it, we'll all be disappointed because it won't be exactly what we want. But for now, we can dream.
We think that it's actually a 200-point LUT. That doesn't really exist, but it would be amazing.
It's a new,
such a beautiful lie.
Filters-like system
They've
that
made
improves
a deal with Ari.
The look and colors of photos. The look. And
it just
sounds.
It sounds
right?
very much like LUTs.
Yeah.
Like again, a press person who doesn't know what that is.
Right.
It's a Peter
sound
McKinnon,
a lot like that.
Or I bet Mark does. Gurman does, but he's not going to. Maybe he's not going to put that in Bloomberg. I don't know.
Does he?
Does he? Does he really?
Yeah,
beyond the camera enhancements, the new iPhones will get, he says, relatively modest upgrades because of the big redesign this year and the 5G wireless networking and so forth.
Getting a better modem. I'm looking forward to that.
Will we get a better modem? Not a Qualcomm.
Yeah,
in other
the
words.
X60.
Yeah.
It'll still be Qualcomm. Except last year we got the X65, the X55. Now we're getting the X60, which is on Samsung's 5-nanometer process, so it's not quite so power hungry.
Good. So better battery life. Same 5.4-inch and 6.1-inch regular sizes, 6.7-inch Pro. Same design. It would be what Apple used to call an S.
iPhone.
Yeah.
It could still be. It could still be a 12S. That's a marketing decision. If they want to goose sales, they use a full number. If they want to lower expectations, they use an S. But if you like the small version of the phone, that's apparently the last year they're going to make, at least for a while, they're going to make a mini iPhone. So if you want that, get it now and then ride that into the sunset like you're John Moltz.
The ProRes feature, he writes, would follow last year's edition of ProRAW. Here's more about the filters. Another feature will let users better control the look of colors and highlights in their pictures. Users will be able to choose from several styles to apply to their photos, including for showing colors at either a warmer or cooler temperature while keeping whites neutral. Another option will add a more dramatic look with deeper shadows and more contrast. And the company is planning a more balanced style for showing shadows and true-to-life colors with a brighter appearance. It will differ from standard filters by precisely applying changes to objects and people across the photos using AI rather than a single filter across the entire picture. Oh, that isn't LUTs, but that's something interesting.
Yeah.
That's content-aware filter.
Separating the lighting effects for foreground and background would be pretty big.
Yeah.
Well, and that's potentially using the LiDAR to know what are objects and what aren't. And so it can use AI, but in some of the phones, it'll actually know these are subjects for this and these aren't. So it's really interesting.
At the very bottom of the article, he says the company is also working on a revamped MacBook Pros with in-house chips likely to be dubbed M1X, a redesigned iPad mini, and an entry-level iPad geared at students. It's also preparing new Apple Watches and entry-level AirPods. Obviously, not obviously, but I doubt they'd announce all of that next month.
The AirPods are easy to float into an iPhone announcement, and then it just depends if they're ready, because they want to sell them for the school season if they can. If they're not ready,
earlier
they'll
is
do
better.
October.
Yeah.
But Apple's people like a lot of the stuff becomes practical. It's like Apple's like, is it ready to ship? Yes. What's the next event? Okay, do it. It's not much more complicated than that.
But I would think that there's also a sense of we don't want to dilute the impact of the iPhone, right?
They want to sell, and there's people who are buying a MacBook who won't buy an iPhone.
Right. Okay.
And also considering how much money comes in because of AirPods, the sooner you can turn those taps on, I'm sure, the better as far as Apple's concerned.
Yeah.
Licensed to print
If
money.
you were worried about privacy as an iPhone owner, you definitely don't want to be a call center worker. Apple is going to monitor them with cameras in their houses.
Apple denies this, though. I think that's important.
This is from NBC News. Yeah.
This one's a little bit complicated. There's subcontractors, so they're not working directly for Apple. A lot of them are now working from home as opposed from working from a call center, and there is a international blight of software that's being used to manage these call centers remotely, some of which use artificial intelligence based on cameras to detect, hey, this person had their cell phone like on their desk, they shouldn't have it on their desk, hey, they were not typing or mousing at this point, and send all these reports to managers. And so they're complaining that these individual employees are complaining that their immediate managers and the subcontractors they're working for are asking/insisting that they have these cameras installed. The pushback is not only just on the principle of surveillance, but also that, hey, look, I am working from home. This camera is like in my bedroom on my computer. I don't want a camera in my bedroom. They're also, because they can't really control, because the contractor can't control what they're going to catch, they have to like ask for permission to also take video of kids, any other people in the house. So that's what the pushback is about. Apple said that they did a review of all of their subcontractors in the area and didn't find any problems. What I found, the only thing that was not satisfying to me was that I don't think they specified if they did this after these complaints were coming out and if they were doing an investigation based specifically on these problems. So it's wrong to say that Apple is demanding cameras being put in these workers' homes. However, I want Apple to say that, hey, we've looked at this particular request and made sure that this contractor is not making this demand that we don't approve of and that is counter to our agreement.
Apple says the company prohibits the use of video or photographic monitoring by our suppliers, and have confirmed that Teleperformance, which is the supplier that NBC was talking about, does not use video monitoring for any of their teams working with Apple. Apple has also, according to The Verge, been shutting down employee-run surveys on pay equity, which is, according to labor law, illegal. Apple insists it does not have a problem with pay inequality. Skeptical Apple employees, this is from The Verge, have been trying to verify that claim by sending out informal surveys on how much people make, but the company shut down 3 of those surveys, citing stringent rules on how employees can collect data. I actually understand why they would do that, but apparently it's illegal according to U.S. law.
Say you can hatch eggs faster by doing it. Everyone will sign up.
How are your eggs, by the way, Renee? I hear They're hatching fast.
Repetitive.
Hatch my eggs. No, just like you on Pokemon Go, I turned on what do they call that feature where it monitors your movement even when
it just gave like the thing that I spent years protesting that I would never ever give away. It's makes me to turn on in a second. I hate myself.
Hey, it's just Niantic, a Google company.
Yes. Quickly though, it is the law that's being talked about there is that it's illegal to prevent employees from possibly organizing themselves on company property. That's from a long time ago, recognizing the fact that that's the best opportunity that people have to organize. You can't go house to house, town to town when everyone's together in one space during the lunch hour. That's a great place to talk about the common grievances. And so, but it's a difficult. I think it becomes a little bit more complicated when it becomes okay. But if we're talking about this in 1970s lingo, is it okay to use the company's mimeograph machine to print up these ballots about and info things? And a lot of this stuff is it okay to use internal mailing lists, internal message boards to do labor organizing? I don't think that question has really been settled adequately.
Yeah, I don't. There's lawyers that say a lot of things.
Right. You can always get a lawyer to say anything.
So it hasn't. We haven't gone to court yet. So until the Supreme Court tells us that it's illegal, then it doesn't really exist. It's just a lawyer's opinion. And so lawyers saying it is good press, but it just doesn't mean anything. And I think that there's a slippery slope here that, obviously people need to have the right to talk to each other about this stuff, but I think that employees can get I've been in situations where I was an employee that wasn't really interested in playing any employee reindeer games, and I got a lot of pressure from other employees to be part of all the things that they wanted to do. And I'm not going to get into the details of it, but I felt a lot of pressure of it, and I didn't think they should be doing that at the company, so around me, and so and I just wanted to be left alone. So we can, it sounds like, Apple is just, but again, it's people's privacy, it's their information that people are asking for. And that may or may not be appropriate, and they should probably take it to court and find out, and they can, I think that if the employees really feel like this, the reason they're probably publishing this is because they probably don't have a case, and so they've signed away a bunch of agreements. Well, they should then take it to court, but if they should take Apple to court over it. But I think that as an employee, I generally don't like, I will admit, when I was an employee, I'm an employee now, I don't really like getting into any of the drama around it. I just want to do my thing, and I mostly just want to be left alone. And so the thing is I have the right to be left alone too.
It's my guess that Apple's interest in preventing this is not so much to make employees not feel peer pressure as no company wants its employees to compare salaries. Period. Because
but they can do that now. They can do all of.
Yeah, and the issue really is should they be allowed to use company resources to do that, or do they have to?
Well,
that's the issue.
Also, should we also point out that by and large, it's not white men who are complaining about pay discrepancies?
Right.
So
no, this is protected classes, and that's one of the things the attorney said is you've got to be very careful about. Discriminating against protected classes, and that might be
so. But I think people who are not white men inside Apple might feel differently about use of company mailing lists to talk about pay discrepancies amongst
people in protected classes might be sensitive to it too. We just have to understand that it's it's not like people who are militant can get really to be a pain in the neck. Right. And so the thing is that to people who just don't want to play, they don't want to get play either way.
No evidence that happened. No evidence at all that happened.
It just happens all the time. It may not have happened here. But it's often.
Okay.
We started off about talking about slippery slopes and how dangerous something can be in principle. For me, I think that we're ending the show or close to ending the show on kind of the same note where it is very, very dangerous when there are steps taken to make it more difficult for employees to organize. And so I think that the natural gravity well here should be to make it easier for people to organize rather than to make it harder. I think that Apple is, I tend to believe that Apple is being honest about the reasons why they're shutting this down, that they were afraid of personal data being compromised, even if voluntarily. However, I think that we should make sure that we preserve the ability of workers to organize and to, again, share information willingly. Those who wish to share information willingly between themselves should be able to do so without interference from management or corporate leadership.
Our show today brought to you by AT&T Active Armor. We thank AT&T for their support. We rely so much on our phones these days, and I know you perhaps listen to this show or watch this show on your phone, and as well as your other favorite podcasts, or maybe you're on your phone catching up with the family, as I do every week on those weekly video calls, or watching maybe the latest streaming content on HBO Max, Suicide Squad. The last thing you want, you're in the middle of a great scene in the Suicide Squad, to get a fraudulent call saying your auto insurance is about to expire or something like that. It got so bad at one point that I just stopped answering the phone. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority and blocks those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible devices, service required. Visit att.com/active armor for details. Thank you, AT&T. Big victory for Apple. I always love seeing these. In Marshall, Texas, home of the patent troll, the judge actually said, well, wait a minute, not this time. There is a non-practicing entity. That's the politically correct way of calling a patent troll. Personalized Media Communications, which it was looking for $308.5 million from Apple, saying that Apple was infringing one of their patents. But the judge didn't like the way the patent had been created. It seems that pre-1995, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office would start the term of the patent when the patent was granted. You'd get 17 years from the date of grant, not from the date of application. So Personalized Media, according to the judge, was taking advantage of this by applying, but then slow-walking the rest of it until they would see that a patent could have some value. And then once somebody else was using it, then they'd say, oh, yeah, go ahead, and that would give them 17 years. The company filed hundreds of applications in the late 80s and early 1990s, but didn't get patents until 2010, and 101 have been issued since then. The judge, Rodney Gilstrap of Marshall, Texas, said, you get nothing. In fact, you might have to pay some of Apple's legal costs because of this. They call it submarining of patents. By the way, the patent law changed in 1995. It is now 20 years from the date of application. So good news for Apple, $308 million they won't have to pay. Apple's Fair Play software was ruled infringing of this patent, and the jury awarded a royalty of $308.5 million. Judge threw it out. That doesn't happen that often in Marshall, Texas.
Even in Texas, I was about to say.
You really screwed this up.
Screwed up, son. Yeah, exactly.
You done wrong.
We'd love to give you that money, but maybe not. A Long Island man has credited the Apple Watch with saving his life after a serious fall. He was only 25, an active guy, rides, hikes. He's a Peloton sales specialist. Has 4 marathons under his belt. He decided to go to the hospital after suffering from severe abdominal pain for days. Accompanied by his dad, he went to the emergency room. During the visit, he went to the restroom where he passed out. Fortunately, his Apple Watch called Dad. Dad rushed into the bathroom and immediately got hospital staff to his side. And fortunately, that along with a fractured skull, he had life-threatening hematomas and underwent emergency brain surgery. Fortunately, that watch notified his dad promptly. So there's a lot of these stories. I hear them all the time now. It's really good. That's why I got my mom one of those for the fall detection. I don't care about the 2022 MacBook Air. Should I talk about it? Actually, maybe we should, because it does have one feature a lot of us who were looking longingly at those iMacs wanted. Color! Do you think this is Ming Chi Kuo? Or as you say, Guomin Chi, or whatever you say. I don't know how you say it.
Guoming-chi.
Guoming-chi.
Leo, you did Chinese,
Guoming-chi. He says in mid-2022, a MacBook Air with a mini LED screen will come out with multiple colors, which is actually
Can't wait.
a bummer because I was going to get that 16-inch MacBook Pro this fall, but maybe it'd be worth waiting because the colors are pretty.
You're going to get both.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Okay, yeah, sure. Why not? That means John will get the 16-inch. John's happy about that with the M1X. Do you think, actually, Gurman was saying M1X? Do you think that's, I saw.
M1X is going to be, so the way, people get so confused, but the way to think about it is Apple still has generations and then scale as well. So Intel has Skylake and then KB Lake, but in each of those, there's the i3, the i5, the i7, the i9. And so there's the M1 silicon generation, which is the same as the A14 in the iPhone. And then there's the A14, and then it's got more cores. It's the M1. It's got more cores. It's the M1X. Then there'll be an A15, M2, M2X. So it's basically the silicon generation and then the amount of cores that it has. And you want more cores on a Pro machine. The M2 is going to be more efficient and better, more advanced, newer, more novel cores, but efficiency cores, whereas the X ones will be the big scaled cores.
Ed Hardy, writing in Cult of Mac last weekend, I didn't mention it, but it's appropriate now, said that the Apple M1X processor would be a $1 billion mistake. He says you should call it the M2 because...
What do you call the M2?
Huh?
Then what do you call the M2 when it comes?
M3.
That becomes so difficult. But then the M3, you're going to have five numbers a year that way because they're going to scale to a Mac Pro.
He says it would mean releasing new flagship MacBooks with the M1X that were obsolete on day one. They debut with what's essentially 2020 chips in late 2021. He said, should Apple make this mistake? You should absolutely not buy these computers because they will certainly add the M2 processor to the same MacBooks next year.
But then they'll say don't buy it. Wait for the thing. Apple's done this before. They released an iPad Pro with an A12Z when they'd already released an A13 on the iPhone. So the iPhone had more recent cores than the iPad, but the iPad had way more cores, which is what people who buy that care about. It's such a weird semantical argument to make.
Yeah.
And then it destroys our ability to know what generation the chip is. How would I know if every chip gets a new number? There's no easy way to tell what generation the silicon is anymore.
So, yeah, he's just talking about a name, I guess, not the actual design of the chip.
Yeah.
He says the problem is if you do an M1X, nobody's going to buy those knowing the M2 is coming out next year, and so you're going to have $1 billion
There's a new chip
inventory.
every year.
Yeah, it does
I think
happen.
It's like that old Bloom County joke with the banana
no
junior.
one
Throw it
is a
away
big
the minute you
word.
buy it.
Yeah.
No one is a giant word. It's a lot of people. No one is a lot of.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, but if they're in color... and they have the M2.
That would be, yeah, exactly.
Would the M2 be noticeably faster than the M1X, Renee?
No, so it depends on how you're defining speed. Apple every generation is about 20% faster. Sometimes the graphics are a little bit faster than that. Then they're more efficient because they typically have better node processes. So the single core would be better. Same way the iPhone 11, the iPhone 12 single core was better than the iPad Pro single core, but the iPad Pro had twice as many cores. So anything that you do that involves at all any kind of scalability will still be way better. Yeah.
What about GPUs? Because honestly, I think that's going to become more and more of an issue since Apple will no longer use third-party graphics processors. We want to see the M series chips have good, strong GPUs, NVIDIA-capable quality, or at least Radeon quality.
I mean, they hired all those guys. They hired so many NVIDIA and AMD people over the last few years. But to Alex's last week point, they won't be CUDA cores. So some people are going to be
that'll never happen. I understand.
I think that affects external apps that want to be cross-platform and want to be able to call to CUDA cores or whatever. But I think that the issue is that the way that the operating system, the way that the hardware and software use the GPU and CPU and the RAM is so different. And I think also what we're going to see again, what I kept on thinking about with Apple's financial report was that legacy, talking about legacy components. I think that what we're probably going to see is more and more unification under Apple's, building all of these components that are tighter together. I started thinking about, I don't think this is necessarily the future, but could they actually make the whole thing just on a chip? Like they just print a chip and then put it in the like there's very little external components.
I think they're doing that. I thought that the M1 did have the GPU on the same die.
Well, but I'm talking about, I think they're going to, but there's all these other components that are in the phone.
Oh, I see. That are separate. They're
and
on the
how
chip,
many of those things become, how many of those things keep on finding their way onto the chip as it keeps moving forward. There's some inefficiencies in that as well, but there's also.
And on die.
Right. On die is actually part of the processor. On package is in the plastic thing. And there is a lot of, I mean, that's where the RAM is right now. Yeah. So the thing is that what we're finding is that the amount of RAM you need is not as high as we thought it would be now because of the way it's processing it. Yeah. The GPU and CPU are going to operate differently. So it's not really, there's no apples to apples comparison. And Apple could theoretically have something that's much less expensive to make, much lower energy, and still perform as well as many very high performance GPUs that have to live outside of that. There's a massive efficiency loss in putting a card in a slot, like that is so they have to overpower all of that. Yeah, and so they have to overpower all of the inefficiencies of the external bus that Apple is not going to have to do. And so you could theoretically have just the same graphics performance without without a discrete card. Good. Maybe I'll buy the color MacBook Air instead.
Purple. It's all about purple.
I don't know. I have pink AirPod Max, or I don't know. They look pink. Maybe they're red, supposedly. But
I just bought more Mac Minis.
Did you?
One. Yeah, because the photogrammetry. I was talking to a friend of mine and Brent. Anyway, I was talking to a friend and he's like, oh, the photogrammetry. The listing is 16 gigs, so you should. So I'm waiting for it now because I had to order one because all the other ones I've gotten are 8 gigs because they do everything I need them to do at 8 gigs. Isn't that
amazing?
Yeah, it's just.
But for photogrammetry, you think you need more?
Well, I'm going to test it. I'm going to take an 8 gig one, and I've got 5 of the 8 gigs already, so I'm going to play with it.
Yeah, let's hear. I'd love to know. Actually, if there is a difference. Yeah.
Just as a matter of principle, MacBook Airs and iMacs should be available in colors.
I agree.
Not gray or a different shade of gray. Yeah. It's like it should be rainbow spectrum.
Yeah, if the pros want to be gray, let them. Yeah. But the rest of us like color.
I have to admit that I remember what it was like to be young.
I was talking to someone about laptops the other day, and I was like, all I do now is spend time on my iMac and my Mac Minis and my iPad, and my poor little MacBook Pro doesn't come out very often, because it's I'd rather have the bigger machine and the bigger screens, or because we just don't travel as much as we used to, or I don't travel as much as I used to.
Yeah, I have to say my MacBook Pro is like by my side as I move around the house. I travel around the house, and I really like that capability. Same. I don't want to sit at a desk. Yeah,
I have to.
Do you have
to say that
I'm holster, like a nice leather one.
A holster. That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
I'm actually thinking about picking up an M1 Mac Mini if I can find one cheap, because the original plan was to keep this like M1 MacBook Pro as sort of my desktop until I replace it with like a proper like mini Mac Pro or whatever. But I'm kind of missing not having a MacBook in the rest of the house. And it's too much of a hassle to unplug all my hard drives and all my screens from here. So it's like, it's only $600, and that's a business expense, and I like it too much.
Consider the source, Alex. This is from Leaks Apple Pro. The M1X Mac Mini's leaked schematics, according to WCCF Tech, show a generous number of ports, a magnetic charger, and more.
It looks good. Looks good. I mean, I think that the Mac Mini is really, I'm much happier with the Mac Minis than I am with my iMac, for instance. I haven't gotten the new one yet, but because there's so much more I/O, and so I think
this new one will have 4 T4 ports, 2, according to the rumor, 2 USB-A ports, a full-size Ethernet jack, and an HDMI port. That seems reasonable.
Yeah,
a partridge in a pear tree.
Apple's going through this is going to be an interesting inflection point in the transition, pardon me, to M1. Because remember that pretty much all the stuff that's out until now is, hey, we have the exact same chip and we've decided to express it in all of the flavors that Macs come in except for the Mac Pro. But now, late 2021, 2022 are the years that the expectation is going to be, okay, that's fine, but now you have to come back to affordable and just powerful enough. Now we need the mid-range thing that this could be the mobile desk warrior, and we need the powerful stuff that does the big number crunching and the big processing. So they've already demonstrated that the M1 transition is 100% successful and the power of the entire platform. Now it's time for them to say, no, now we're not just going to simply have the same Pop-Tart, just putting it in selling it in different toasters. We are now going to show how well it scales up and how well it scales down.
Netflix and Apple both bidding for the next Jennifer Lawrence J-Law film. She'll play Sue Menger's super agent. I don't know. I feel like that's miscast. I think it's more of a Jennifer Coolidge kind of a role, but okay.
Okay, first of all, in this streaming market, entertainment market, they have to be very, very clear. Do they mean super agent as in a very, very good agent, or it's one with superpowers?
No superpowers.
Yeah, exactly.
Sue
that will
Mengers
affect my streaming
was
decision.
was a talent agent.
There you go.
Who was very, very powerful. But did not have, as far as I know, any superpowers unless it was her poison pen.
It's not James Bond. It's
The film will be produced by Excellent Cadaver, which I'm sad to say is Jennifer Lawrence's production company. Bidding has eclipsed $80 million. There are some mutterings, according to Variety, that it's got. I like that mutterings that has reached $95 million.
I think one of the really interesting things with the streaming networks is that the math is changing for what what movies make sense and what don't, because they're trying to fill out an entire stable of they're looking at how they do it, and whether it makes money in the box office is less important now, and it is or not important at all. And so it's a really interesting math that they're applying to all of these of it. You got to have this many of this and this many of that, and Netflix is way ahead of everybody as far as knowing what they want in that area, but all of them, the bidding is going to. I think we're going to see different kinds of movies getting put into it, and than we have in the past because of that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's also. I think it also affects how the producers actually sell their wares. Now that they know that if I'm selling this to Netflix, there's not going to be. I'm not going to make money off of any other sales or releases. I can't. It's not going to be. If it's being produced by this company, it's not as though in 2 years from time they lose their exclusivity, and now I can bid up to another streaming agent. Right. So a lot of them are going to be saying, "Look, if you want this, if this is a really competitive thing that a lot of people are bidding for, you're going to be paying a lot more for this than you might have paid for it 5 years ago." I'm telling you that.
By the way,
I'm just announced a huge audition. Like they're going to do so many reality shows. They need to do a mega audition now. It doesn't matter for what show. Just show up, audition, and if they like, send in a 1 minute, a 1 minute video, and they'll. Yeah, so they'll like Andy wants the Incredible Race. Just send in your 1 minute video, Andy, and you'll get whatever Netflix makes out of the yeah.
Yeah, you'll end up on one of those things where you have to eat scary bugs. And nope, sorry.
Vince, all I can say is that the scorpions are very chewy. The body is chewy.
Not if you deep fat fry them, then they're a little crisper.
Really?
Which I would recommend. Yeah.
Okay.
No. My pitch deck has us, our production company is flipping the model as a reality competition in which the winner manages to maintain their integrity and their dignity throughout the entire series. The first people to agree to do something that is untoward gets eliminated.
Oh, I love it. It'll be called.
No, I don't think I will be eating those bull testicles. That's disgusting. Much less let you film me for it. Congratulations! You win the fast forward to the next round.
You're looking for a what boy? No, I'll be sitting here reading a book.
No. I like it. Strong mores. That'll be good. I don't know if you've read Carl Hyacin. He's one of my favorite novelists. He had a great book in 2013 called Bad Monkey. The story of a one-time detective demoted, this is so Carl Hyacin, to a restaurant inspector in southern Florida. A severed arm found by a tourist out fishing pulls Yancey into the world of greed and corruption that decimates the land and environment in both Florida and the Bahamas. And yes, there is a monkey. Apple TV has just made a deal to produce a new 10-episode series based on Bad Monkey. Yes.
Is this a Florida man joke? Are you getting
all Carl Hyacin novels are Florida man jokes? Yes.
Have you
do you? I take it, Andy, you like Carl Hyacin.
That's one of those names where it's up to you to screw this up if you're going to adapt this for television or for a movie. It really you can't say that you weren't given incredible material that would make a great pitch, a great poster, a great trailer, and a great pilot. So it's up to you not to screw this up.
Great many Carl Hiaasen TV shows and movies, I think. Yeah.
I think that they to promote it, they need to put out a little app that just does a search. All you have to do is do a Google search of your birthday and Florida Man. Just put that date in Florida Man, and they just built an app that does that, because we have found that there is no date that we couldn't find that didn't produce a hilariously amazing article. Like it just Google like whatever date you want and then put Florida Man, and you will get a.
100 years from now. I want some sociologist for their PhD dissertation to specifically and definitively document the original Cardinal Florida Man. Just like we're always looking for like that first division between Homo erectus and whatever. Find the first known instance of Florida Man that all Florida Man behavior sprang from.
I think it has to do less with the men in Florida and more that it just sounds good. So you say Florida Man. You don't say Arizona Man, Pennsylvania Man.
There's dummies in every
off.
state, believe me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel bad because I love Florida, and I think we've dissed it several times now on the show and I apologize to all our Floridian fans. I'm just apologize. By the way, Bad Monkey will star Vince Vaughn. Perfect Florida Man. Actually, I should point out in Hyacint's stories, the hero, which Vaughn will be playing, is always smart, canny, effective. Yeah. And it's always him in opposition to the not so smart Florida people that he runs into. So Vince Vaughn will play the smart guy, the smart Florida Man. And it will be produced by, and you might be excited about this, the writer and executive producer of Ted Lasso, Bill Lawrence. So nice. It has a good
shortbread for everybody.
Yeah, and shortbread will not appear in this.
You talk about someone who
there will be a monkey, however.
you talk about someone who could blow their nose on a paper napkin and then make that into a slide deck and get a 12-episode commitment in the room.
Yeah,
Ted Lasso. That's all you got to say.
Yeah. I think Apple probably has just signed him up for the rest of his
if only to keep him happy and to keep them in the board.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a little time out so you can all self-medicate or whatever it is you do.
Way ahead of you, boss.
Cheers,
so that Renee can get his eggs hatched. And Alex can photogrammetry something on his desk, and then we will continue with our picks of the week. Picks of the week. Let's start. I'm going to go left to right this time with Renee Ritchie. Renee?
So I highlighted a Sony camera last week, so I thought it was only fair to highlight a new Canon camera this week. And by no means am I turning this into Canon or Camera Break Weekly, but there are such interesting features happening there that I want to have on all our devices. For a while, smartphones were really leading the pack, and it feels like the camera companies are paying attention now and starting to do interesting things. So Canon has a new R3, which is like they're more photography centric. Like if the R5 is in the middle and the C70 is more like a videographer camera. This is more a photographer camera. It does 30 frames per second bursts. It can do it utterly silently if you want. It can do synthetic click noises. It can do manual shutter if you want it to. But it has a couple of cool features. Like it doesn't just do face detection and eye detection and pet detection. It does car detection. It'll track all of those things with autofocus, so you don't have to. And what's neat is when you put your eye up to the view screen, it'll scan your eye and then focus based on what you're looking at. Which I think is a really interesting thing.
Oh, wow.
And like we already have these on iPhones. Like we have the Face ID thing. So if you could like look at what I'm looking at and then just focus on that for me, and I don't have to start tapping the screen like an animal.
That's pretty cool.
That would be great.
So is this less expensive than the R5, or is it more expensive, or do we not even know?
I don't know if they've said I think it's less expensive than the R5. The R5 is just ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Man, I picked a bad time to quit Canon. I have to say, they've really done some amazing stuff now.
But Sony's doing is I think Fuji, there's so many companies doing such interesting things with cameras right now. I just want to spread I don't want to pay for everything, but I want to spread the love.
Well, I gave my vast collection of Canon L lenses to my son, who's using it for his career. So I guess birthday, maybe we're going to have to take a look at a R5 or something because he has the Mark.
And Canon seems
Mark
like they're
4.
all in on R lenses. Like they're not making any EF lenses anymore that I can tell. It's all RF lenses.
Can
now.
you adapt an EF lens? Yes, you can. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they even have speed boosters, which let you get full frame out of the cropped sensors, which is really nice.
Oh, that's nice.
But like for what I do, it makes autofocus. Like I need really fast autofocus. I need quiet autofocus because I do the video, so I don't use the adapters much. They're nice in a pinch, but the RF lenses, super smooth stabilization in the body, in the lens. So I don't, like if I don't have a tripod or I don't have a jib with me, like anything like that, it's still super smooth, especially when I slow it down from 60 to 24. Yeah. It's just, the convenience is so great.
I'm sure Aunt Pruitt will review it because he loves the R5. He had to send it back, poor guy, but was really impressed with the R5.
He'll be all over it.
So he'll be all over it on our hands-on.
It's great. I have one right here.
You have an R5, yeah.
So
look how much smaller that is than the than the 5D. It really is nice. Yeah. Andy Notco.
It does overheat. Like it will overheat if you do 8K and
of course.
4K for time. It will. That's the only downside. Yeah. But if you only.
He's coming and going. Andy Notco, pick of the week.
If a lot of you are familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000, that really seminal and hysterically funny series that would basically riff bad old movies with like new, new sarcastic but funny commentary. If you're familiar with that, then you're probably familiar with Riff Tracks, because after Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of shut down its doors, mostly for the big, a lot of the people who are working on that formed this company Riff Tracks that did a lot of the same stuff only on streaming, and they have a big library of streaming riff instructional movies and like B movies and stuff like that. The only thing that kind of held me off from experiencing them is that riffed movies, they're almost always great, but I can't spend like $10 to like download a digital video of something that I might like, or it might just be a terrible movie that cannot be made fun of because it's anti-fun. It's such a bad movie. However, they've just created their own streaming service called Riff Tracks Friends, and so if you can just go to the rifftracks.com for $5.99 a month, you can stream a large chunk of their Rift library indefinitely, as much as you want, and that's exactly the way that I like to enjoy Rift Tracks content, because sometimes these movies, they're just nothing is happening for 2 hours straight, and there's such a complete lack of anything happening. There is nothing to make fun of. There is nothing to be funny about, and that's when you bail. Then you move on to the next thing. I will also say that what got me to sign up for it was I fell in love with the riffs that are done by Bridget Nelson and Mary Jo Peele. They are such a great team because they add if you're familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000, it's normally these three dudes or one dude and their two puppets. And it's a sort of vibe of like, there's like a very male sort of like, hey, we're all just sort of being sarcastic and aggressive. It's funny, but it's definitely sort of a three guys on a secondhand sofa sort of vibe to it. With Bridget and Mary Jo, it's more like two friends that are kind of together, and they're basically having fun together riffing this movie.
This is Devil Girl from Mars.
It is there, Michael.
It's a Roomba for the planet.
The Haunting of Wuthering Heights, Last Hill House on the left.
Do you think they write those ahead of time, or are they? Huh?
Oh, of course they do. Yeah. No, they used to in the first couple of seasons of the first season of Mystery Science Theater 3000, they were just like do it on the spot, and they all acknowledged that that was not ideal, and we kind of like to pretend that season didn't exist. So yeah, it is very, very well written. So it's not as though you're going through like 4 minutes of silence while they're waiting for the next funny thing to happen. Right. They will fill time with funny stuff.
You might have won me over with this one. I used to love Mystery Science Theater 3000, but I haven't seen any of the riff tracks, and I think this might be fun.
A lot of it is great, especially, again, if you're a fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000, oftentimes they go back and they re-riff stuff that's in the public domain. Like they do, there's the Riff Tracks version of Mr. B Natural. There's the Riff Tracks version of, I think, Monos. There's definitely the Riff Tracks version of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. And for God's sake, you have to almost applaud that they have to do a riff of a 90-minute movie all over again without repeating the same beautiful jokes that made the cut the first time, and so oftentimes it's just as funny. I don't anticipate that I'm going to be subscribing $6 a month forever. I suspect that at some point I will, exactly,
do a few months, and then
I'm going to have a good time going through the entire collection. Like I said, I love these people. I want to support the work they do, but I can't spend $10 not knowing if this is another like Puppet Master movie where it's like, oh God, I feel the sadness that is befalling the people who had to watch this movie 10 times to write this show. Yeah, this is bad.
Are any of the MST 3K guys on this?
Riff Tracks
Joel's
is
not, right?
No, Joel's not. He's still doing Mystery Science 3000. They're doing another Kickstarter to help me bankroll another launch of Mystery Science.
There it is,
3000. But no, Mary Jo is
114% funded. Yay!
Yes. So Mary Jo is one of the former Mads. Mike Nelson is in it. Mike. The voice of the Kevin and Mike, the last voices of Crow and Servo are in it. Oh, okay. And you'll also recognize some of them. But again, Bridget and Mary Jo are also part of the original DNA of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Nice. And it's great stuff.
Brilliant. Alex Lindsay, pick of the week.
So, a little known fact is that I came out when I decided I wanted to learn Photoshop. There was a little training in South San Francisco at the South San Francisco Convention Center, and I flew out. I probably in I want to say 1991. It might have been 1992. And Bert Monroy and David Biedney, but Bert Monroy was one of the folks training, and then I got to run into him again when we were doing. Screensavers, and then we did a recording with Revision 3, with Pixel Perfect. So we did a lot of that with Bert. So I get to see Bert's work over time, and it just keeps on getting more amazing. And he actually has a website where he's been very productive over COVID times. And what you're looking at in those images are no photographs or scans. So this is all done from scratch. So everything he does is from scratch. And if you click on Fine Art, I think a newest one just came out today. That one I think the top one there, it says it's Paris one? Courtyard. Yeah. So that when you look at that, he just has an incredible ability to build this from the ground up,
many hundreds of layers. And the thing is, you don't really get, unless you can see these in person, is you can zoom in a lot. Right. This is dot by dot he's doing.
Yeah, and so it's just incredible work. Yeah. And so it's just worth if you look at any of the images that you see there, you'll think, oh, well, that's a great photograph. That's cool. And then you go, oh, that's not a photograph. That is that's
computer enhance. Yeah. No, it's like telling the computer enhance zoom.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's more detail. Zoom. Yeah. Oh my God, there's more detail. Zoom. Oh my God, there's more detail. Yeah.
I'm actually I'm in this one of Times Square somewhere. I can never remember. I'm on a garbage can somewhere, I think. You see all these faces are real people that Bert knows that he adds to his you see there's
just amazing.
Russell Brown
just stunningly amazing work.
Yeah.
So it's just worth checking out the website. And so
there's Bert. That's his ponytail. I'd recognize that a mile away. Oh, there we go. There's Twit. Look at that on the garbage can.
That's John. I'm pretty sure the one in the red shirt there is John Knoll. Who he and his brother created Photoshop.
I wonder if that's his brother. Yeah. Oh gosh, I love Bert. In fact, now that he's got a new one, we should probably. By the way, notice I am zooming in.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's zoom all the way in. You can see the bolts on the screens on Times Square. And this is one he did a long time ago. He's gotten even more refined. Yeah, it's really great.
And only when you zoom in that far in did you realize that what you thought was just a photo is no. He decided to make artwork of those posts,
of
those
jacket.
poles, of those uprights.
I mean, he does. It probably took him a day or more to do the stitching on that jacket. It's incredible.
Yeah,
just incredible.
It's like Where's Waldo? Only there's no Waldo, which actually makes it as much fun. Yeah. Like there's so much detail to just keep examining. It's like walking through Times Square, and there are people that you pay attention to, people you don't notice, people you notice again. It really is a dramatically cool imagery. I'm glad he's still doing it.
A little plug for an app that Micah Sargent told me about and I've used ever since, called iMazing. It is not free, but it is probably the best way to back up your iPhone. It's really powerful. They've just added a new feature. If you're worried about Pegasus, iMazing now detects Pegasus spyware on your phone. Just a little plug for them. And actually, you should consider iMazing because it's a very, very good program anyway for your backup. You could try it for free. It's $60 for a full license. And now, with Pegasus detection. That is it for Mac Break Weekly, kids. This was a good edition. I know a number of people were worried about the show and the conversation about Apple's privacy. And, of course, many of you worried about the fact that I was wearing a plaid shirt and a plaid suit. Both of those fears, I hope, have been ameliorated.
Did that just to make Alex's left eye twitch. Like,
yeah.
Scrubbing patterns. Scrubbing patterns.
Thank you for the plaid.
I sense more Ray. We do Mac Break Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. Almost always joined by three of the best people in the business. Renee Ritchie. Find him at youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. And again, another plug for the excellent job you did breaking it all down in your most recent video. Really, really good. Sounds like you spent some time on it, too.
About 3 days of me not moving.
Yep.
Editing station.
Reward his work. Just put it on auto loop. For the rest
You don't have to. It's 45 minutes long. It'll take all your life to get through it.
Thank you so much, Renee. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to Andy Anako. When are you going to be on GBH again?
I'm on Friday this week at 1 p.m. Just go to wgbhnews.org to stream it live or stream it later. Still no news on when we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library studios, but hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and now you're prepared.
Exactly. Again, and I have to do that. I have to do that Predator like arm clasp with between Carl Weathers and Sylvester Stallone with Renee, because like I too for the past like 3 or 4 days, it's like, okay, we'll make one list of things that are totally not clear, things that I thought I understand but are contradicted by things that Apple has said, and third, things I have no idea about and have to become an expert on in 2 days. Well, let's order in.
Yes. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Andy. And, of course, Alex Lindsay, officehours.global to watch the now 24-hour-a-day 7-day a week.
It's amazing. Like
marathon.
It's become like this. I mean, we've watched it grow over the time here, but it's gotten to be surreal because 24/7, you literally just log in and there's somebody there talking about something techie, and we're experimenting with something. Last week, I think Wednesday of last week, I put up, we're going to talk about the Olympics, like just the Olympic production. We had members from Office Hours that are in Tokyo working on the Olympics who came in, and we just talked about audio. Like we talked about the commentator stations and the audio routing and just how many people were working on it. But these are people that are actually, they're Office Hour members. Like they've been part of the Office Hours community. And part of that was they found each other to go to Tokyo. And so now they're all in Tokyo. And so we're going to talk about the Olympics again tomorrow, but just video instead of audio, because we spent the whole time talking about audio because the audio guys showed up, you know, and just
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and we've had some folks from other broadcasters show up in these after hours. Like some of the guys can't talk on the YouTube stream
on the record.
So the after hours becomes this thing where these guys show up and they're like, oh yeah, this is how that video got done, or this is what it looks like. It's quite a thing.
Congratulations on your 500th episode. You're such an overachiever. 30 weeks, 500 epicehours, folks. 30 weeks.
500 this month.
Yeah.
24-hour party, people. That's your subtext.
Yeah.
Officehours.global, and of course, Alex's day job, 090.media. We invite you to join us, as I mentioned, every Tuesday to watch live. If you're doing that, chat live at irc.twit.tv. Of course, Club Twit members can also chat live in the Discord server. After the show is over, we produce it, clean it up, chop it up, put a beginning and an end on it, and put it up on the website for your download at twit.tv/mbw. You'll note, though, that there are links there to our YouTube channel. Mac Break Weekly has its own YouTube channel, so you can watch shows there, too. You also can subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you do, please do us a favor. Give us a 5-star review. Let the world know about Mac Break Weekly. Believe it or not, there's still some Apple lovers who don't know about Mac Break Weekly. It's a shock. I know. Thanks to everyone for being here. We'll see you next time. Now it's time to get back to work, because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. If you would like to check out more about tech news, then you should check out Tech News Weekly with me, Micah Sargent, my co-host Jason Howell, where we interview the people making and breaking the tech news every week.